Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And I want to apologize profusely for last night's program that was not so much wonderful in the sense that the internet was playing a very huge role in having the sort of, making the live sound choppy. But this afternoon, we plan to have an interesting live, and hopefully, you'll join me shortly. And welcome to this channel, Declassified Caribbean, where we challenge the reigning heterodoxy, and we try to see what we can, how we can ask some of the hardest questions. Now, in this afternoon's program, we're going to be looking at Mottley and Ibrahim Traoré. And these are two of the most interesting and world-renowned politicians around the world. We have Miss Mottley of Barbados, and we have Ibrahim Traoré. I don't think that these individuals need an introduction, right? These individuals are people that are renowned politicians, to be specific, who are renowned around the world. Two leaders, two visions, and we have two very different paths for the future of the global South. On one side, Miss Mottley, praised on the world stage, embraced by global institutions, and positioned as a voice of diplomacy, reform, and partnership with the very powers that have long shaped the Caribbean's destiny. On the other hand, Ibrahim Traoré, young, defiant, and unapologetically confrontational, challenging Western influence head on and calling for a radical break from the old order Africa is under. But here is the real question: which path leads to true sovereignty, and which one risks reinforcing dependence? Are we witnessing at this point in time smart strategy versus reckless defiance? Or is it the other way around? This evening, we're not just comparing two leaders, we are interrogating two models of leadership, two philosophies of power, and two competing futures for developing nations. Because the stakes are not abstract, they are economic, they are political, and they will define whether regions like the Caribbean and Africa remain on the margins of finally take control of their own destiny. Let's get into this discussion. Now, let me start off with welcome to the live. Those of you who are here, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in your neck of the woods. Now, Miss Mottley attended, I think, graduation ceremony recently, and that was at Sciences Pro, and here they are capturing, in essence, what the world perceives of her, the Honorable Mottley, a first choice guest speaker. One word they're saying that characterized Miss Mottley, that's Miss Mia Amor Mottley, is unique. Her one-of-a-kind personality, her passion, her eloquence, her brilliant mind, her empathy have made her to be the first in many titles and accomplishments. She was indeed the first woman to hold the positions of Attorney General, leader of the opposition in Parliament, and the leader of the Barbados Labour Party, that's the BLP. She is the 8th Prime Minister of Barbados since 2018, rejected in 2022, re-elected rather, not rejected, but re-elected in 2022. And we know that she also won the elections of 2020. Was it 25? Yeah. And the first Prime Minister under its Republican system, a change she made a reality. So she is the first Barbadian to appear on the cover of Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in 2022. So that's something interesting. It's rather an accomplishment by Prime Minister Miss Mottley that she has had several firsts, right? So we see here the first female Attorney General, and she was elected in Barbados as Prime Minister in 2018, re-elected in 2022, and also re-elected in 2025. That is a magnanimous woman, if we want to say a magnanimous politician, right? And here now we're going to look at Mr. Traoré, right? Ibrahim Traoré. And this is coming from the Atlas Institute International Affairs, Tangible Change or Online Cult, the case of Ibrahim Traoré, and Burkina Faso. And we have in the past few weeks, Burkina Faso's incumbent ruler, Ibrahim Traoré, has created somewhat of a firestorm online, as it has reported he made all education from nursery to university free for the citizens of Burkina Faso. This has allowed his followership to have increased, because people think that he's actually improving lives for the people of Burkina Faso. Now, is this a cult? Right? Are we witnessing a cult of personality to the likes of Mr. Ibrahim Traoré? Now, these are some of the questions that we need to ask as we look at what is happening in the world. However, in spite of the massive number of posts online venerating the decision, there appears to be some confusion around the truth of the actual claim, which says that he's, giving free education from nursery to university. Many posts have been found to have used AI-generated images and manipulated audio. So when they're telling you that he's speaking, he's not the real one speaking, right? That is what we call deep fake or manipulation of the audio. Almost everything is now AI-generated. In their claims, as well as one post claiming to display a pro-junta anti-colonial demonstration in the country's capital of Ouagadougou. In fact, these posts use images of an anti-corruption demonstration in Belgrade. So what we're seeing mainly online about Mr. Traoré are things that are AI generated. They're not real. And how do we decipher between what is real versus what is unreal? And they using Mr. Traoré as a new form of this internet, the globalization of internet, and people going after news on so-called independent website, their independent journalism, and our Caribbean audience and audiences around the world are consuming these types of videos and thinking that they're really telling them the truth, that Mr. Traoré is anti-imperialist. Now, what we want to ask ourselves in this afternoon's program, what does it mean to be anti-imperialist? We want to ask these very important questions. And if Mr. Traoré is an anti-imperialist, is he still with the World Bank? Is he still with the IMF? Does he use these institutions? And are these institutions imperialist institutions, or are they institutions seeking to actually make us sovereign? We want to explore these questions. Let us listen to what some of you are saying out there, and we can continue. Lion Champion is saying Mr. Ibrahim Traoré is a true visionary. He is fearless and not a coward like the other complicit Black so-called leaders. Yes, and that is what many of the videos and what we are reading are suggesting, that he is in fact someone who is able to challenge Western imperialism, the likes of France, the United States, among others. My only pushback, as I have said, about Mr. Traoré, he's actually using sidelining. He's cooperating with China and Russia. And I'm saying you're sidestepping one form of imperialism for another, but it's yet to see how this is going to progress in terms of his partnerships with China and also with Russia. But so far, so good. We have not yet heard anything towards where he's connected with any corrupt people. But I do question the fact that he is connected and aligned with the World Bank and also the International Monetary Fund. Now, it's embarrassing, Land Champion is seeing how Caribbean are bowing to America and not calling America's murder of Caribbeans at sea out. That is true. That is true. And that's why we're here to compare, Land Champion. And we hope that you're able to help us to do that, to unpack this. What is this? Because we have to say that Miss Mia Mottley of Barbados is equally a cult of personality, as we are seeing also in Traoré. Now, which one is authentic? And we want to look at which one perhaps is not so authentic. So these are the questions we want to ask ourselves. Miss Mia Mottley presents herself as someone who is also anti-imperialist, yet still she works for the imperialist institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. And her climate change advocacy, that's the climate change advocacy, is really Western imperialism. And that's what we need to understand, that when they're telling us about this climate and all of that stuff, we are trying, the more they get us into that sort of religious, philosophy, then people are going to sympathize with what the West is doing. We must understand that. And as I open up the video, there is something I want you to watch here of Miss Mia Mottley, and she was talking to a journalist, and it appears to be that she's anti-imperialist, but I want you to watch what she's saying, because we have to look at what they say and we have to parse every word they say, because they sound sometimes that they're speaking the truth in their rhetoric, but a lot of times, if you parse every word, you understand that it is not simple what they're saying. I want to listen to this. Let me share my screen with you. And we are going to watch her words here as she is being interviewed by a journalist. Now, very interesting interview, and we must say that she's eloquent and she's able to handle herself. That's Miss Mia Mottley, and she's in fact a brilliant speaker, right? So let's share that with you on the stage and listen to her. Listen to what she's saying. Let me turn up the volume. Okay, just give me a second. Let me get it to you.
Barbados are so ingratiated with China. Why are we in so deep with China? So are you swapping one superpower for another?
Well, once again, I regret that the person who asked the question doesn't know our history. In 1977, Barbados established relations with the People's Republic of China. And therefore, to suggest that we are now seeking to ingratiate ourselves with China means that you don't understand where we've come from or what we're doing. Any country that lives in this world today, to exist in this world, ought to have relations with every country. And China is clearly a global power. And for us not to have a relationship with China, even if we didn't have one 47 years ago, would be foolish.
But you've been very complimentary about China. You had a phone conversation with President Xi Jinping recently. You said this is all about strengthening the relationship with China. In 2019, the government signed up to the BRI, the big infrastructure projects and so on. And some people are suspicious. They think that China wants to buy the family silver.
Well, let's put it this way. I've also been very complimentary of the Americans and the British and the Canadians. So that for me not to be complimentary of China seems unusual. And similarly, for persons who believe that because we want to be friendly with China means that we are a pawn, tells us what they think about us in the first place. Because we are capable of being, as our first Prime Minister said, friends of all and satellites of none.
But it's not just Barbados that's moving closer to China, it's the whole of the Caribbean. I mean,
it's the whole
investment
world.
From China has gone up many folds.
But so is the whole world. If I look correctly, I think the Chinese hold a large percentage of assets within the United States of America and a large amount of their treasuries as well. So for you to focus on the Caribbean or Africa with China without recognizing the role that China is playing in Europe or in the North Atlantic countries is a bit disingenuous and really reflects more that we are seen as pawns, regrettably, rather than countries with equal capacity to determine our destiny and to be part and parcel of that global conversation to fight the global issues of the day like climate and the pandemic.
All right, well, that's put me in my place, hasn't
No,
it?
not at all.
Honestly, we'd like to know why.
Have you heard her? One, she said that the world actually depends on China, and China has lots of relationship with the world, right? And we know that the role of money in controlling the world. And don't think that it's only the United States or Western world that uses money as a leverage, right, to control the world. She also said, essentially afterwards, that climate, why are we worried about imperialism and what China is doing and perhaps what other nations are doing, when what we should be worried about is climate change? Right? Now, how do you see that? How do you understand what she's saying there in terms of, is climate change eventually going to be that glue that joins the world together, irrespective of our differences, irrespective of our philosophies, irrespective of what we think is imperialism? We've got to ask these questions because these are questions that nobody's asking, right? What role is climate change going to play, which Ms. Mia Mottley is the goddess of climate change, right? She is like the main advocate, the ones that the global elites are using to sort of cover us into a corner that, yeah, it's an alarmist message that we have to be prepared for climate change. But these are where we have to think now. Is she going to remove that sort of wall of what we call it now, of pushing back against imperialism? Okay. Now, Lion Champion is saying, and we continue to read some of what you guys are saying. Mia Mottley is a great speaker and an orator, but some of her actions show that she is controlled by the Western imperialists. Absolutely. But she is bearing a message that she's saying is affecting us globally. And generally speaking, people are going to listen to someone when they see, for example, their climate being warm. They see strange things happening to the climate and the environment. So they are going to say, you know, should we have to listen to Miss Mia Mottley? Now, what happens when if we have another pandemic, right? Something that is untoward we weren't planning for. Well, Ibrahim Traoré forget what he's doing and link up with these people to protect, as it were, the environment and the climate. We have to ask ourselves these questions. So while we see these two people that they seem to be talking the talk that we want to hear, and that's what I'm saying very clear, we have to differentiate between rhetoric and actions. And that's what Lion Champion is doing here, that he's hearing Miss Mia Mottley. She speaks eloquently on the global stage. She sounds authentic because she talks about things that are affecting us in truth and reality. The point, however, that we want to mention here is the fact that she does not always walk the walk. She talks the talk, but she does not always, if ever does, walk the walk. Now, so far, we are seeing things about Mr. Traore, on the other hand, but we are not seeing a lot of what he's doing, because we are thousands of miles rather away from Mr. Traore. However, we can see what Miss Mia Mottley is doing, right? There's more exposure to what she's doing than what Mr. Traore is doing. So whilst we can't really see what Mr. Traore is doing, but we can read his rhetoric, if some of them are true too, because we're hearing that many of them are AI generated. And the entire world, including this region, follows exactly what he's saying. I have had people, including my family members, and they will say, oh, but Traore said this, and look at this video. And I said, this video is not real. Right? Many of the videos that people are watching, getting hundreds of thousands of views, the algorithm is pushing it because the algorithm is controlled by these same people, right? Then people get very, they're betrayed, they are deceived, but they can't understand it because they don't understand the real agenda behind what these people are doing. Now, let me just say something to you and introduce a word to you. We have this word called the Hegelian dialectic. Right? Now, the Hegelian dialectic means that you are going to have the synthesis and the thesis. So you have the thesis, the thesis and the antithesis, I should say. And they want a synthesis from both. So you have the thesis here, which is anti-imperialism, and we're all working against it according to what they're telling us. Then we have the antithesis, those who are pro-imperialists, right? The pro-the West. And we see these guys and they're at loggerheads, right? They're fighting with each other. At the same time, the global elites want neither of them. What they want is a synthesis of both of these ideologies. But people, what they do, they side with the thesis, then some are siding with the antithesis, and then what? Neither of them will win. Because the global elites are very understanding. They understand very well that our people, whatever they see, they believe. So if they can side and they can divide us and tear us apart, then what is going to happen? We are going to be divided, and then they can conquer us. I hope you're listening very carefully to what I'm saying, because you're not hearing this from the other podcasts. And many of you already have been deceived. I see your comments sometimes, and I understand that what is happening in the world is total darkness and deception, where we're seeing lots of rhetoric. We're hearing lots of great rhetoric that if it were possible, even I, who understand the agenda, would be deceived. But guess what? I have to bear this courageous message to you, which perhaps you don't want to hear. So Miss Mottley is a great speaker, but some of her actions, she is controlled by the Western imperialists. You're correct there, Lion Champion. Ibrahim Traoré is about action, not words. Yeah, but we're not seeing the action, Lion Champion. I think that we hear a lot about what is happening, but many people are not really seeing. They're not there to see them. And that's what we're here to unpack. What are his actions and what is he doing to actually prevent Western imperialist domination? But what is he saying about the climate change agenda, which is going to affect all of us as we speak? How did he handle the pandemic? I know that he came to power in 2022 in the midst of the pandemic. What were his thoughts on those? Was he in alignment with what they were doing, which is the same a part of the climate change agenda? We have to ask these questions because we can't just say he's doing all of these great things and then something comes and then he plunges his country into the hands of the Western imperialists. We've got to look at that. Okay, and I think people who perhaps were on Miss Mottley's side before the pandemic, they thought that she was authentic, she was real. Many people thought she was real before the pandemic. During the pandemic and after the pandemic, I think Miss Mottley was unmasked. People realized that she is not the person that she pretends to be, and her primary agenda during the pandemic was the climate change agenda, which is a global agenda, and it is global tyranny. It is not what you think it is to protect the environment. That's far from the reality. In fact, what they're doing, they're trying to transfer the wealth from the poorest to the richest, telling us that the climate is coming to attack us. We all have to invest in climate change, but it's not for the poorer class. And more about that too, because we're going to talk about the whole matter of the reparations, reparatory justice. The climate change and reparatory justice are tied hand in hand, right? That is the agenda. You've got to read, you've got to do your research if you want to educate yourselves in the correct way. Too much darkness in our region, and we've got to wake our people up. Now, don't you know how media works? Yes, that is how it works in terms of trying to misinform us and trying to cajole us and to say that this is the agenda when it's not. So we have to understand that media is a way of controlling your mind. It's mind controlled by the CIA, and many of these personalities, right? We really don't know them. Don't ever question everything. Don't think that a leader, because he has wonderful rhetoric, means therefore that he is or she is going to defend your cause. Question everything and ensure that nothing is left unquestioned. You should stop talking. You are going to make yourself look silly. Well, you are silly if you're thinking that Ibrahim Traoré is a one that is going to liberate you, Lion Champion. Okay, you are going to see that that is not so, right? So that's a cult that you're part of that you have to push yourself away from, because that is not the reality. It's not going to happen, right? And you can see the world is moving in one direction. The world is not moving in several different directions. Now, let's go on with Mr. Traoré. We understand that Mr. Traoré is a Muslim, right? So people who might think that he is just a secularist, right? We understand that he is a Muslim. So Ibrahim Traoré is religion. What do we know about it? Religion often plays a central role. I want you to read this. Religion always or often plays a central role in West African politics. I repeat that. Religion often plays a role in West African politics. I don't know why this thing is coming on my screen now. Let me just write this thing before it goes back. It goes up back. So give me 1 minute. Let me write my email here because it's affecting my ability to read. And gmail.com. Right. So we have subscribe. Okay. Right. So religion often plays a central role in the West African politics, with Burkina Faso at the crossroads of faith, identity, and governance. The question on many minds is simple. What is the religion of President Ibrahim Traoré? And what they're saying here is Ibrahim Traoré, the young military captain who seized power in September 2022, is widely reported to be a practicing Muslim. French daily Le Monde identifies him as the country's first Muslim president since Sangole Lamizana, and that is 1966. His upbringing in the Haute-Bassins region, a predominantly Muslim area, further supports this identity. Though he has not made public speeches solely dedicated to religion, his background and cultural environment leave little doubt about his faith. This aligns with Burkina Faso's broader religious composition. According to Pew Research Center's 2025 Global Report, the 2020 data set shows Burkina Faso's population was 67.4% Muslim, 28.0% Christian, 0.6% unaffiliated, and 4.0% folk religions. And this was startling because, Burkina Faso only has 4.0% folk religions, right? Muslim is the predominant, 67.4%, Christian, 28.0%, and unaffiliated, 0.6%. So we can say that this country is highly religious, right? With the Muslims dominating. Now, there are lots of people who might say, why are you saying that? Because religion affects people's worldview, whether you like it or not, it does. And that is why you see the United States behaving in the way it's doing. That is why you see the Middle East behaving in the way it's doing, Western Europe behaving in the way it's doing. You can see the difference between also Catholic nations and what we call Protestant nations behaving completely differently. Because the religion that they affiliate their leaders, the country, the pulse of the nation is what informs their actions, is that which informs their worldview. And that is what we're seeing. Now, with Mr. Traore being Muslim, does he believe, for example, in the Sharia laws? He's saying no, that he does not believe. Let us be fair to him now. He says that he does not believe in Sharia laws, right? And Sharia laws, for those of you who don't know, is the Muslim law equivalent to what perhaps you'd have as the Ten Commandments in Christianity, because they're suggesting that what you call it now, that is the moral impetus of the religion. But Mr. Traore is suggesting that he does not believe in that. Now, here is an interesting document that is coming from Harvard Kennedy Center. That's the Belfer Center at Harvard University. And for those of you who do not, let me just share my screen with you, because some of us are so illiterate in terms of what is happening in the world that we think that what we hear and what we are associated with and Pan-Africanism and all of that stuff, we think that is what is going to liberate us. But let us listen to what Harvard University is saying here. Since some of you are so much anything that the mainstream says, that is what you believe. So let's share this document and let's read it together, right? Now, this is from give it to you again, from the Belfer Center from Harvard Kennedy School, right? And it's saying here, a fresh and illuminating perspective on the surge in religion's political influence across the globe. Across the where? The globe. Is religion a force for good or evil in world politics? This is what Harvard University is asking. How much influence does it have? And notice, let me just say something here, that Harvard University is responsible for graduating a lot of the elites worldwide, not only in the United States, across the world, okay, including in Africa. Despite predictions of its decline, religion has resurged in political influence across the globe, helped by the very forces that were supposed to bury it, right? Democracy, globalization, and what? Technology. So many of you think that the technocrats, the techno elites that you see in California are not religious because they're just simply making some technology and they want us to live in a modern world. That is what you think. but they have an absolutely different agenda. And despite recent claims that religion is exclusively irrational and violent, its political influence is in fact diverse, sometimes promoting civil war and terrorism, but at other times fostering democracy, reconciliation, and peace. Looking across the globe, the authors explain what generates these radically divergent behaviors. In a time when the public discussion of religion is overheated, and perhaps we should say ignorant, these dynamic young scholars use deeply original analysis and sharp case studies to show us both how and why religion's influence on global politics is surging. It is not diminishing, even though they're telling you that you should not think religion matters, okay? Because our leaders are secular. And you don't hear it in the mainstream media a lot, do you? But it is what informs much of what we see in global politics. I am not here suggesting that it should. What I'm telling you, that you cannot ignore it. And many of you here, you come on the platform, you believe you know, you think you know, and you don't know how religion influences global politics and technology and science. Finally, they offer concrete suggestions on how to both confront the challenges and take advantage of the opportunities posed by globally resurgent religion. Right? So this is coming from the Kennedy Center. So they're not just telling you something that is not happening. It is happening. This is what we're seeing happening in the world, and that's why we're hearing Trump now coming and tell about the Monroe Doctrine and God and destiny, right? And all of that. The United States has a destiny, and it has to fulfill that destiny according to what they think, what they are misreading from the religion that is informing them. Now, is Mr. Traore also, he's suggesting that he's not and will never use religion to influence what he's doing. But let's look at some of the facts, right? I'm just here to give you the facts, and you can do whatever you want to do with it, right? That is my thing, right? I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear, as most podcasters are doing. Now, look at this, and I'm going to share my screen with you, and you can decipher what you want to think, all right? So let us go to Mr. Traore. We're still dealing with Mr. Traore and the fact that you think he's here to save you, and he's this Pan-Africanist and whatever. You can do whatever you want to say, right? But let us go and look at this very important article. And I'm going to share my screen right here, put it on the stage, and share it with you so that we can read it together, okay? Now, this is coming from Modern Ghana, right? So this is probably an African publication. Let me just say aloud. It says, Traore threatens to strip citizenship from Burkina Faso students, that's the citizens of Burkina Faso, studying Sharia in Saudi Arabia. Now, he's suggesting here, well, let's read what they're saying before I begin to talk, right? And this is Tuesday, July 21st, 2026. So this is not like a long time ago. This is recent news, okay? Burkina Faso's military leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, has publicly criticized the religious education being given to Burkina Faso students in some Arab countries, opening a new front in his government's contest with religious institutions operating beyond state control. So he wants the religions or the religious institutions in Burkina Faso to be controlled by what? The state. In other words, whatever the state dictates, that is what they have to teach. According to the Senegalese outlet Declassified, Traore said around 1,000 Burkina Faso students are currently registered in Saudi Arabia studying Sharia and Islamic law rather than acquiring the technical and vocational skills he says the country needs to develop. And that might be true, right? But should he clamp down? And how often do people in the West or leaders clamp down on things that we are doing too because they want to protect us? You have to give up your civil liberties because they want to protect you. And that is what the same argument this guy is using. Traore's remarks made during a nationwide broadcast went further than a policy critique. He said his government intends to repatriate. To what? To repatriate the students, and warned that those who refuse to return could effectively lose their Burkinabe citizenship. So, in other words, if you are aligned to a certain religion, and even though I might not agree with it, and I'm not pro Sharia law, I'm not saying that what they're doing might not turn around and defeat him as president of the country, and he wants to protect himself. But at the same time, we've got to be concerned about civil liberties, because when they go, they often do not return. All right? One widely circulated account of his comments put the number of unaccounted for students even higher, claiming Burkinabe diplomatic missions in Saudi Arabia have no record of roughly 800 of the 1,000 students believed to be there, all reportedly enrolled in Sharia and Islamic law programs rather than technical trades. Traore, who describes himself as a practicing Muslim, insisted he was not targeting Islam itself, saying every Burkinabe has the constitutional right to practice their own faith, but stressed there will never be Sharia or Sharia law in Burkina Faso, and that the country's constitution stands above any religious code. Now, we hear this all the time, that they use that, that they're not for this and they're not for that, right? But how can we believe them? Did I stop this here? How can we believe these people, right? And I want now for us to have a very intelligent conversation. How can we believe them after they have stripped us of our, what you call it now, civil rights, all right? And when you talk about civil rights, it's also religious rights, by the way. Right? Civil rights means that you have both. What is happening here? Am I back on the screen? Yeah. Okay, good. I thought I was off. Yes. So what we want to discuss in this program is for you to understand that Burkina Faso is a religious political state, right? Where we see the president is Muslim. And that religion is going to inform his political decisions, his worldview, whether you like it or not. Now, is that worldview, is the Muslim religion, does it align? Is it aligned with Africa's freedom? I think I want you to understand that, right? Because when we look at even Malcolm X, who had to adjust some of his sort of religious values and perspective, do you think that he thought that was going to, free African Americans? That the Islamic faith was going to free African Americans and Black people around the world? I don't know about that. Let's listen to some of what you're saying. Burkina Faso World Bank and IMF arrangement was before Ibrahim Traoré. You can blame him for a relationship he did not start. He's paying off these debts. Now, the fact of the matter is, I don't think that is totally true. That is true in the sense that, yes, there was IMF agreements before Lion Champion, but he has extended the agreements since his coming to power. So it's not just what he's carrying off about them, but he has also entered into new agreements with them. Don't you see how the West keeps focusing on China? All the war you see in the world is because America wants to stop China's rise, but it's too late. America will be defeated in Iran. America and China work together. And that's what I'm saying to you. You don't understand that the global elites, there are a lot, as Miss Mottley said, and she contested in the interview, she said that, why are you focusing on Barbados and Barbados' relationship with China when the United States, a lot of its assets are owned by the Chinese? So we know that at that level, and if you read a little wider, Lion Champion, you will see that the global American elites, right, the oligarchs, work along with Chinese oligarchs. What we're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call globalization. And they told us that globalization was going to have the world working together. However, what they're doing, they're pitting us, the citizens, against each other. And we are not seeing that the global elites, though they're telling us that they are, divergent and that they're disunited, but they're working together, right? So you have investment, Americans investing in China, China investing in the United States, and all of that. And who benefits from that? Not us. That's why we're having the conversation every day. That we're seeing these investments, right? And people their lives are not getting any better. I give you an experience. Yesterday, I was watching a video again of a citizen of Jamaica complaining that the highways, right, the tolls on the highway, eventually people will not be able to ride on these highways. And these highways are debt-ridden highways, but they're charging the people astronomical tolls to ride on them. Now, who built these recent highways, the north-south? China, right? Yet still, the price is going up. Jamaica gave lots of its prime assets to China, and what is China doing in return? Enslaving the people, right? The people won't be able to use the highways because it's just too astronomical. And these are the things we have to look at and stop comparing US and China as if the oligarchs are divergently opposed. They are not. They're not. And that is what you have to go up to do. We are looking at these countries as we're watching a sports match. This is not a sports game, right? This is real, and they are against you. You and I are the enemies. Whether you are black, brown, yellow, we are the enemies of these global elites. So we have that America's decline and the Caribbean will be in danger. Then we have Trevor saying, hey, Andrew and family, not at the best location at this time, but will contribute from the comment section. Traore has pushed a number of reforms, but to see the transformation is another thing. Yeah, and that is what happens, that as we were saying, and I want us to discuss in a very intelligent manner, we are a part of a system now that is interlocked, is interconnected, and that it seems to me that the entire system has to go down if we want change. The system is not going to change right now because the system is interlocked. It means, therefore, that, if you want to get through to your family and everybody is around blocking you from getting in to talk to your family, then you might not be able to get to talk to your family. The best way to get them is to get rid of all of them, maybe to kill them, to unalive them, right? But at this moment, the system is not going to be reformed by one country or two countries or one man or two actors. It's not going to happen, right? It's going to take global education for us to understand who really are the enemies. And the enemies are just not Western imperialism and versus Eastern imperialism. And this is the question I want to ask you in this afternoon's program. If the United States empire should die tomorrow, if everything of it should just collapse tomorrow, would all our problems be dissolved? Do you think that imperialism will die in its form? Now, when you read history, what we see from the beginning of times is that empires rise and they fall. So it means, therefore, that if the United States dies tomorrow, another one comes on the scene. So the whole matter is not just about empires and imperialism. It's human nature that wants to control and to dominate. And if you when you get a lot of power, that is what we do. When we get lots of money, and even our family members, even personal relationships, once you think you have the edge, you control. And this is what we have to look at. Just like trying to cure symptoms of a disease is not going to cure the disease. Is when you look at what? Curing the root cause. What really is causing the disease? What really is causing imperialism and one country dominating the other? It's human selfishness, right? The desire to have everything. And who to tell? Do you think only United States or Westerners are selfish people? Don't you think that there are selfish people also in China? People who are covetous? People who just are selfish? Okay, yes. So it's not that if an empire dies tomorrow, then another one, we're going to be free and everybody's going to be able to run and we all live equally. It is not going to happen if we don't deal with human nature. And what is the cure for human nature? Nobody can say. That's the question we need to ask. Nobody can say. And Trevor is saying all policies look good on paper. And he's right. Right? And this is what we're seeing, that they sound good. The rhetoric sound good. Miss Mia Mottley's rhetoric sound good. But in fact, many people who do not understand Barbados, they are praising Miss Mia Mottley. So the Africans in Africa are praising Miss Mia Mottley because they think what they hear is what they're seeing. And it's not true. It's the perception that they have of her that she has given to them. But when you go to Barbados and to live there and to live with her policies are two different things. And that's what we need to understand about Mr. Traore too. And we can't go to Burkina Faso and stay there for even a month or two and think we know Burkina Faso. And I've seen people say, oh, I've been to that country and this is grand, and they give you some great things about the country. But if you're going to understand a culture, you have to spend at least 2 years without traveling in that culture, living the life of that culture. That is when you understand the culture. Nobody understands the culture as you see Americans running from one country to the next, and they go to the beach and they come here and there. They're just getting a little feel, but they don't understand the culture. To live in a culture, understand it, you've got to live in it every day, see the ups and the downs. Right? And we see many people come, oh, I've been to Burkina Faso, and they begin to give wonderful testimonies. And that's okay. That's what you see. But it does not mean that that is the reality. And that's what we have to understand. You go to Barbados for a day or two, and oh, it's wonderful. And yeah, but you don't understand the reality of the people and the policies of Miss Mia Mottley, do you? Now, we have Trevor saying people are being led with their emotions when it comes to these new leaders, which are clearly being pushed onto them. Sorry to say, but many Blacks especially are often by far very emotional. And I understand why we are, because we have been the most exploited, abused people on planet Earth. And that history is more recent, and I understand it. And we're still living in it. We're still living in that history of exploitation. It has not ended. But as I'm suggesting to you, just like we wanted the pandemic to be over with, but it didn't take a V to get it over with. You had to look what is the root cause of it. And many of us still don't want to know the root cause of it. So we just jumped on board and we took what they said was the sort of, remedy for the pandemic. But did it really cure the ill of that virus? No. It's the same thing. People are looking towards a leader, a messiah that will come and change Africa and make Africa into a free state. But I'm saying the same ailments of all the other imperialist countries are the same characteristics that bedevil our African leaders. Africa is not growing. Africa is the same thing with our leaders there, and they behave in the same way. Their underlying goal is to be rich and to gather as much money and power as they can get. So don't think that don't put that load on him. And that is what is sad. Why are you putting such a load that no man can carry on Mr. Traore? It's not that he's a bad guy. I'm not here to say that Mr. Traore is a bad guy. And the land champions of the chat might think I think he's a bad guy. I'm not saying he's bad or he's good. What I'm suggesting to you, he's working in a system that is working against all of us. The question I would like to ask, because what we're seeing in the world is that sometimes, like Miss Mia Mottley, they speak as if they are against the system, but behind the scenes, they are working with the system. And then you believe because you see, oh, she's saying this and she's saying that. So we have to do more questioning, more reflection, more reading, more analysis. And our region is not known for doing that. Our region is just known for highlighting some corruption charges day to day by politicians. And we don't want to look at the root causes of the very corruption that we're talking about. And it is systemic. The problems that we have in this region and worldwide are systemic, and the underlying reason is selfishness. Humans want all. And that is what it is about. And if Mr. Trump should leave tomorrow, if Mr. Traore, any of them leave tomorrow, the world will continue as it is right now and get worse. Why? Because human nature is what it is. And that's why you read from history and people say, oh, history repeats itself. It's not that history repeats itself, it's that human nature never changes. Human nature does not change. And that is why we say that history is repeating itself. But history is not crazy. We are the ones who are crazy. Because the history repeats itself because the cycles are the same, and then we go after the same personalities, we go after the same reform, and nothing changes. Okay? And that's what we're saying is happening here. And people are deceived, and they're happy to be deceived. Now, we have people, and that's very true, Trevor. Let's go to the next comment. We have, say, Trevor agreed. Absolutely. Very well said. And we have now, Trevor, given America is in its final stand as the world power, and all the smaller countries which had relations with them are finding new masters, the new masters rule via investment, unlike America. And what we're saying here is that the world is now more interconnected than in the 70s. And I think people are still viewing the world as the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. 2000, we had the likes of globalization vis-a-vis the internet. So the United States and China are not the same as they were in 1990s. The relationship is not the same. Right? They have different relationship because they are interconnected, and the global elites are interconnected and they do business together. Right? So if they're doing businesses together, how is it that they are enemies? We are their enemies. And that's what I'm saying to you. We are the enemy of China. We are the enemy of the United States. And that's what I'm saying to you, that when China goes and invests in your country, in the Caribbean, what we see are the same things: tolls, high tolls, even though we're paying for them and we're going to be indebted to them forever, right? And then we begin to cry and say, help. We don't want to help yourselves if you don't want to hear the truth. If you think one is better than the other, if you think one is less selfish than the other, you need to grow up. And when we go to a Chinese store, okay, let's go get to understand the Chinese. Okay, you go to a Chinese store, and you owe them 1 cent. Are they giving you the thing? Or do they just, right? You can't owe them even a cent, right? But yet you believe in them. They're not imperialists. They're great. They're better than the Americans. And we begin to have these nonsensical arguments rather than the symptom, saying that this is imperialism at best, human nature. And that is what humans do when they want to be enriched. They will dig out your eyes to enrich themselves. And that is what we're seeing. We're living in corporate states, guys. We're not living in public states where the governments are actually working in your favor. They're working with global elites. They're working with corporate entities to extract as much wealth from you, and then they share the wealth among themselves. And that's what happened during the pandemic. That is what happened why do you think all the governments were on board? Why do you think all of them were on board? Nobody was talking about Western imperialism then. Why didn't they talk about Western imperialism with regard to the vaccines? Right? Was China doing that? Was Russia doing that? But you can't wake up. You're still sleeping, and you're going to have some really awakening, some serious things happening to us because we won't listen. China especially is very generous with their investments, and yes, religion is always an influence in government and cannot be overlooked. Yes, they're generous with investments, but their investments are for them and not for the people, right? Because as we're saying here, you have to pay huge sums in tolls, and also your lands, your ports are being given over to them. So who controls whom? So the investments look good on paper and what you're seeing on the surface, but beneath the surface, what you see is control. But you don't want to hear it What you want to see is, because you're so, we're so childish in this region, that people want to just watch some sports and, oh, this team won, so you're looking for one team to win, and that if China is going to win and the US is going to go down. And that's not how the world is going to run. It's not like that. It's not as simplistic like that. I wish it was like that, because my understanding, I think it would be easier to analyze politics. The way in which you analyze politics, I would like to do that, because it would make my job easier. Because it would be so simplistic. That is, one is A versus B, and this one but it doesn't work like that. It's much more complex than that. And that is what keeps me on my P's and Q's reading all the time. Because there's so much to unpack. But for you, oh, it's China. Okay, yeah, they're fall. Okay, China, United States, and which one is going to win? And you think you're watching a football game. Now, anytime you see a leader being pushed, one should be very cautious. Usually that's the selected leader the foreign investors allowed on the platform. Note, it's the same news media that vilified Lumumba. Right, and then when you see the algorithm also pushing him, the same the guys who control the technology, right, pushing Ibrahim Traoré and Miss Mottley, you've got to take note. You've got to take note. Leaders who are conscious, who are willing to challenge the status quo, are not going to be pushed by the algorithm, are generally not pushed by in fact, you don't even know them. In fact, you will not even know them if you don't dig and search for them. They will never be known. The doctors that were good during the pandemic were not known because the algorithm did not push them, right? They pushed what they want you to know. With the doctors that they thought, oh, this is bright, he's eloquent, he's from Harvard, yeah, so whatever he says, it means that it's of value. But you were not willing to do further research, so you think that those doctors were the only doctors who could have helped you curing of the pandemic, right? So we have to understand, as you're saying, Trevor, that the leaders who we should have are the ones who are not actually pushed, right? The ones who are genuine, the ones who are dynamic, will not be pushed by the system and the algorithm. And that is why Miss Mottley is so dynamic, and that is why perhaps Mr. Traoré, I say perhaps here because we know very little about him. We know very little about him, except for the videos that you have watched in which you can't differentiate between what is real and unreal. And that is what they're pushing now, right? They're trying to push us into a world in which we will not be able to decipher what is truth, right? Because whatever is truth to you is what thousands of people are viewing. Oh, wow, that the person has 1 million views, and you comment and the person not saying anything, right? Now, we have Trevor saying the Islamic State, and I'm being very intentional when saying state is something grossly underestimated and is oftentimes not even recognized for its power throughout history, now and later. Yeah, the point I was raising here, and you're right, is that the Islamic State is going to have, just like the Catholic state believes in the merger of religion and politics. So it means, therefore, that Traoré, if he is a true Muslim, which we are not sure, right? But if Traoré is a true Muslim, just as if you're a true Catholic, you are going to merge religion with government, because that is how it works, right? This is how it works. In fact, that is how it has ever worked during history. The Protestant Reformation, or the Protestant Reformists, are the only ones who said that religion should be separate. Do you know that? That it was during the 1648 Treaty of Westphalia that they actually decided that they would separate religion from politics. But throughout the entire world's history, religion has always been mixed with politics. And when it's mixed, religion is always wins, whether you like it or not. Now, I am not vouching for religion to win, because I don't believe in that. But what I'm saying to you is that that is the reality. It's not what I want, I'm telling you what the reality is. And that the reality, whatever religion that they're affiliated with, is going to inform their economic perspective, their social perspective, their worldview. Okay? You have to be aware of these things, but you're not aware. You don't want to be aware. That's where you're going to be deceived. And this region is a dark region. I did not know how dark we were until the pandemic, right? Lion Champion, you are delusional because you're a Pan-Africanist and you think that Africa is going to be liberated. Africa is going to come and actually liberate us. It's not going to happen, my friend. You have to go and read. You've got to read, and that is the entire world is delusional because they think so, and that is why we had them being able to run over us during the pandemic, and they will continue to do so because we are delusional, thinking that leaders are here to protect us when most of them, Lion Champion, as I've suggested, if you're listening and if you can understand, if you have an inkling of comprehension, most of them are as selfish as any other human person is. Because that's what I'm saying, that this is not, we are trying to treat the symptom and suggest that one human is better than the other, but I'm saying to use a system that is in which people are just inherently selfish. And he who has the wealth and the money is the one who wants to dominate you. That is how the world operates, has been operating since time immemorial, and will continue to operate until we find some cure for that human foible, that human characteristic, human nature. Right? So you can wait, Mr. Lion Champion, on Traore. And in fact, it's delusional, as I'm suggesting, to put all of that on one man. And we have seen all of this from the Caribbean, Mr. Michael Manley, Burnham, Maurice Bishop, of all of these things. We have seen these people come and they go. Because it is not wise to think that one man is going to come and change the tune of imperialism. It is not going to happen. So we have the life of Delhi saying Mr. Traore is a true leader. He's driven out to French and he's speaking the truth and doing the right things, nationalizing their gold, because that is what you read. And I'm just saying that what you read, you can't believe everything you read, right? But what we're seeing now, we're not saying he's true or he's evil or he's whatever. What we're saying to you is that you have to separate what is real from what is unreal. And most of the videos that we're watching in the Caribbean are videos that are AI generated, what we call deep fake. And they're not necessarily giving you the truth. The same way in which the world also sees Miss Mottley as this great leader, and we're finding out that she's not. Right? It took some time, but people are finding out that Miss Mottley is not real. She's just there to tell you what you want to hear. And for those of you who are anti-imperialists, who would not really endorse Miss Mottley's and her, fiery rhetoric, we would all, because we understand that we all want to be free. But I'm suggesting to you, in the system that we have today, that is interlocked, that has been globalized, we call it globalization. That's why everybody is doing the same thing. You're watching YouTube video, another person is doing the same thing. You're all sending the same memes. Everybody behaves the same way. Everybody's talking about the same thing on YouTube. And then when you talk the truth, you're delusional because you're not accustomed to hearing the truth. What you're accustomed to hearing lies, and then what is truth, I can't listen to that. That's the delusional. And that is what we're hearing the likes of Lion Champion. So we have here, where do you get your information from? I get mine from many sources, not just listening to Black Talk as you're getting your thing. You're just listening, Lion Champion, to Black Talk. And I used to be a part of that, and hear the nonsense about African history. I was a part of that, ate that every day. And one of the things, many of the people that you see talking about the Africa and whatever are more imperialists than you can even imagine. A lot of them, and I've seen it, worked with them, and they're not as true to their words as you think they are. And they will betray you in a second when they have to. Okay, so grow up. Why do you think America trying to control the world's oil supply to control China and other nations? But America is already in China. Yes, America is an empire. What we're saying to you, Lion Champion, and I think I have to repeat myself over and over again, that the global elites work together. Okay? And the fact of the matter is that it's not just one nation against another nation, is that you have a reigning oligarchs. The entire world is against the working people and people, the middle class people too, because they want to make us slaves. So whether they're in China or they're in Russia or they're in wherever you find them, in France, they all are working against the people of the world. Why is it that our governments have not been functioning for years? Every year you vote, every 5 or 4 years you vote, right? And it's the same things over and over. And then they create wars and say, oh, it's China versus Iran. It's this versus that. Is that? And then you jump on these bandwagons. They deliver nothing to you, right? Oh, and you just make excuses. Oh, it's because Obama could not get any reforms in Congress and the Republicans were against him, so, he couldn't have done anything. When Obama was just an imperialist, just like any other US president. But you cannot understand that. You don't want to understand it because what you see is, oh, he's the first black president. We have to be nice to him. He came and he saw a wicked economy. The economy was under the toilet. So what could we expect from him? And then every succeeding president or prime minister, the standard is lowered. And then eventually we're going to walk into tyranny. While these people, including perhaps Traore, will be happy and having fun, while you and your children are going to be the slaves. So let's be very, very truthful and understand what I am not reading what you're reading and, mixing up our minds with nonsense. Then we have here the lion, don't make me laugh. Get all your feelings about understand what I said. So we have here, Trevor, me laugh when what are the West terrorist groups trying to kill Ibrahim Traoré because he's a spanner in their system? And that might be so, and that might be so that they're trying to kill him, because one of the things about life to Lion Champion is that it's, as we say, it's not as simplistic as we think it is, because all of what we're seeing is multi-layered. Why were they trying to kill Trump? Some people argue that, they were trying to kill Trump because Trump was trying to save America and the West, right? So we have all of these arguments, and the point of the matter is here, we really don't know what is happening in politics. What we do know, we don't know the fine details of what is happening in everything. What we do know is that they're not working for us. That is what we should be sure about right now. If you and I, Lion Champion, can agree that they're not working for us and that the system is irreparable, the system is irreparable because human beings make up the system. And because human beings are selfish and despicable by nature, especially when they have power and wealth, then we can have a conversation. Until you understand that, if you think this rotten system, which is decomposed, it's rotten and it stinks, we don't understand how much it stinks to high heaven. The system, it cannot be reformed. It cannot be repaired. It has to be totally overhauled. It has to be destroyed. Okay? So what is your solution to destroying the system, Mr. Lion Champion, and how do you think we can redesign it in a way in which it will eradicate selfishness and human weaknesses and humans' natural propensity to increase power and to increase wealth? Tell me how you do that, and perhaps I will listen. Until then, telling me about this man is this and that is that and this one is better than the other has nothing to do with anything. Okay? Got to really open our eyes right now. Lion is saying, if African takes control of its resources, the West should be finished. They have no resources. Why do you think America uses military to take over? Yeah, and all of what you're saying, Lion Champion, is true. But the fact of the matter is that behind the scenes, what we see the Africans doing, and Lion Champion, you know that, is that they're uniting with Western imperialists, the Western imperialists getting more factor. Look at the Nigerians and the wealth that they have in Nigeria in terms of natural resources. And then you have all of these Nigerian oligarchs, and they join in. They're in UK, they're in United States, and all over the world, right? Billionaires, right? And they're joining their wealth with Western imperialism to what? To conquer you and I. Okay, so we have to come out of the mindset that this is African and this is Western, this is whatever, because at the end of the day, they're humans, and humans want power, and humans want wealth. When they do have those two in their hands, they dominate. They dominate. And you know that. We know that. We have seen it in our own families do that. And it's just human being, the nature of how we behave. So we can behave as if, oh, I'm anti-imperialist all we can. And I told you before that many of the people, including Obama, they went into politics behaving as if they could change the whole system that was there. And then when they went there, they did the same thing and worse, because it's the system. And they can't change it. And they're not courageous enough to change. And let's be honest, they can't. One man can't change a system. One man cannot change a system. And it's a globalized system. How can one man do it? How can one man do it? It's impossible. But they're making you believe that he can, so you won't know who the real enemy is. And then you're spending all your mental energy, your intellectual powers that God gave to you to use, and you're not using them to focus on one man, on one Messiah. And when he disappoints you, which he will, because he can't, then you're going to cry. Now, remember too that in Jamaica, Michael Manley, after his reform, and did many reforms in Jamaica, and did some great things. We're not going to now try to to underestimate and undermine what Michael Manley did in Jamaica. But at the same time, afterwards, Jamaica came out worse. Jamaica came out worse, and it's poorer today than perhaps it was in the 1970s. So Traore is more than a glimmer of hope among many in Africa. His image represents the consciousness in Africa who are to their gills tired of the corruption, but one still needs to be alert. Right, and that is what they do. They work on, and Trevor, you're right. And I'm not trying to pit Trevor against you, Lion Champion. What we're trying to do here is saying we're not trying to say here that what Mr. Traore is doing is not honorable. Nobody's saying that. What we're saying, you have to be careful, because we've seen this. They could be playing, as Trevor is saying, on our emotions, right? The fact that they know we are uncomfortable, we are unhappy with what is happening, whether in Burkina Faso or the world. They know that. But they can now use, they're very cunning, and they will select somebody who is very powerful, gifted, and eloquent, an orator, the likes of Miss Mia Mottley and Mr. Traore, deceive us and then conquer us. And is that what is happening? We know that's what is happening with Miss Mia Mottley. That we don't have to say nay to. But is that the same thing they're doing with Mr. Traore? That we don't know yet. But what we're saying here, Lion Champion, we have to be cautious, and we cannot begin to make definitive statements that Mr. Traore is anti-imperialist when we really don't know. What we can see, it seems like he is, but is he really? We don't know, because there are many more days to see. And then we have, thanks for the laugh, but glimmer, yeah. And then we have, do you even know what imperialism is? What history books have you read? Why do you think America embarked? You are so anti-American, Lion Champion, that you think America is the only empire we've had in the world. All right, but we have had many empires in the world, right? You've had the Babylonian Empire, you have the Empire of the Medes and the Persians, you have the Greek Empire, you have the Egyptian Empire. We've had a lot of empires throughout the globe. And when we look at them, I think, as you're suggesting, Rome was one of the iron, they call the Iron Empire, because it was so tough and terrible, right? And America falls under that empire. It is a part of that divided Roman Empire, just like the British and the French and the Spanish and all of these empires. So yes, I know about imperialism, right? But what I'm suggesting to you, history is a history of imperialism, empires rising and falling, and we've never been at a point where they ever fell and say, okay, that was the end of imperialism, because another one comes up, and then another one comes up. So after America Lion Champion, do you think another will rise, or do you think America is going to be the end? That is the question we want to ask. You need to stop the delusion, but you are in a delusive mind. You are just on America, 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 America. And we're saying that this whole matter of imperialism, Lion Champion, is bigger than America. America is just following in the vein of what happened before. In fact, and you have been on several of my lives, Lion Champion, in which we have said, many American scholars are saying that America thinks that it is a new Rome. So America is actually patterning its actions, its imperialistic actions, after the Roman Empire. It's nothing but the Roman Empire anew. Okay? So this is nothing new. This is nothing new. And if I'm saying that history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes, because we behave the same way. And you just have to look at the Roman Empire, the same thing they did. The same thing. The British Empire, the same thing they did. But somehow people saw the America and said she was a democracy and that she believed in freedom, and then we went back to sleep. Okay, yeah, democracy. We're living in modern times, okay? We have nothing to worry about because we're all free, right? And then we're seeing right now that that thing that was in America from day one of being an empire, and now she's about to strike, and is already striking, and then we're crying and think that another person can come and save us. It's not going to happen, because it is the history of the world. It is what empires do, and that's why they rise and they fall. Okay, so yeah, America is on the So you can tell me about Cuba and all of that. I read all about that. Did my dissertation on that. It's I'm really, really yawning, right? China bought 800 million rather people out of poverty. Right. And I'm not saying that China has not done some great things. Now, we have to understand that America also has done some great things, right? How many persons have America brought out of poverty? How many people traveled from the Caribbean and from Africa and from all over the world, right, and became somebody in America? So we can also say America has done some great things, and that's what we're not here to say. And that's what I'm saying, Lion Champion. We cannot reason by saying that this is entirely evil and this is entirely good. It doesn't work like that. What we want to do, have a balanced conversation and look at imperialism in a very balanced manner. Because America, the same way, did some great things. It's now moving away from its goals and its objectives and and its values, right? But the fact of the matter, America did do that too. And don't forget, and just go and read Henry Kissinger's books, and not only Henry Kissinger, but the that guy there, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and you will see that America aided China in getting the wealth that she has today. America helped, because the oligarchs in America want the United States to fall as it is. They are in the quest of a one world government, right? And I don't know if Mr. Traore would be opposed to that. But this one world government is not going to be a system where nations are going to be America and whatever. You will still have them, but they want us to be under the umbrella of a one world governance, which means, therefore, that any country, including Burkina Faso, that does not adhere to what they're doing will be taken out. Okay? And we can see that during the pandemic, the same thing happened. A prime minister or president who opposed the policies, boom, you're gone. All right? We've got to wake up. Now, Lion Champion literally referred to Gaddafi and what Traore spoke about, which referred to what you just said, to unite Africa. Right. And that's the whole thing. I'm happy you called this Gaddafi, who was a decent man, right? And we're not saying Gaddafi did not do bad things too. But the fact of the matter, he is human being, and we're not, we're not perfect, right? We're flawed creatures. But the fact of the matter, he was trying to unite Africa, and we saw what happened, right? So we've seen history before, and we know Traore is not God, people. He's a human being. And why are we I'm not even blaming Traore, I'm blaming us. Why are we putting all that weight on one man? Why do we think one man, even a country, cannot really defeat the United States in its current purpose in terms of its military might and stuff like that? How could you think one man is going to do that? You would be delusional to think that. Right? But we hope, we can say we hope that he'll be courageous to stick it to the end. Maybe we'll have others who will come and other nation states will follow in his footsteps. But to suggest that Mr. Traore is going to just come up and defeat a mighty empire, the likes of the United States, and remember too that we're not talking only about the United States, we're talking about her allies, such as France and Britain and all these other countries. Okay, so that the one man has to fight them and win them, that is idiocy, and it is also being delusional. It's not going to happen. We hope, we wish it could happen, but that is delusional thinking. He did a miracle. Unless, let me just now say this, a caveat, unless there is some divine intervention, some supernatural intervention, it is not going to happen. No human can do that. And yet still we're so stupid. And just to think that one man would be able to fight the West, entire West, with hundreds of years of experience in imperialism, fight and win the West. That is stupidity. Come on, guys, let's get our brains together and begin to think and remove ourselves from loving this person. And I don't hate Mr. Traore. I love all human beings, right? What I'm saying to you is if Mr. Traore was my brother, I would have to question him too, okay? Because it's not going to happen. Then we have hail. Everybody's hailing. So we have who makes the airports, docks and infrastructure for other countries. It has been China. Good luck. Yes, but the docks and the airports, don't you think that these are very prime infrastructure for people, for the countries, and that the countries can be ruled, can be actually controlled by them when they own these key infrastructure? Yes, so we're not saying that they're not making some great infrastructure, Lion Champion, in our countries. They are, but we're saying how much control do they have, having built this infrastructure? And how have we lost? How much of our sovereignty have we lost? And can we ever get it back when it's gone? Right? That is what we're saying. We're not suggesting here that it's China's fault or Chinese fault to have built all these things. No, we need them. But why don't we have them? Why didn't we have them in the first place? And as I'm suggesting to you, when they're made, after they've been made land champion, can we afford them? As this guy from Jamaica is suggesting, the highways there, the north coast, the north, whatever, south highways in Jamaica, people will not be able to ride on them very soon because the tolls are too expensive. Why are you having a toll 5,000 to go and 5,000 to come back in a small little island like Jamaica, a dot on the map? It's not like you're moving from Jamaica to Florida and you have to pay 5,000 to go, 5,000 to come. Who does that? And these are Chinese highways. So what is so different and so special about the Chinese investment? Nothing. They're all the same. Yeah, so good afternoon. Good afternoon. Well, land champion, I don't think anything I say you will ever think is potent because you are not studying the facts. All right, so we have lots of emotions in the chat today. Yes, because it's when you talk about the cultic personality of Miss Mia Mottley and Traore, and I think that Traore is even more a cult of a personality than Miss Mia Mottley, if you should ask me. I think the entire Caribbean seem to be worshiping him as their new savior, new messiah. Land champion, and thank you for still contributing, land champion. That's what we like to. We like people to disagree. We have to disagree to agree, right? Have you ever even checked how the Western media talks about Ibrahim Traoré and the AES? Yes, they can do that because, as I said, they have what we call the Hegelian dialectic, and they can pretend as if someone is an enemy while at the same time using them to do what they want them to do. So that does not say anything too. Right? It doesn't say anything. By the way, when we look at Cuba, let us look at Cuba objectively. you can go to Cuba right now, and even when it was, 1980s, 1990s, go to Cuba, and you will see like, wow, everything about anti-imperialism they tick off, right? They're standing up to the United States. They have free education. They have free healthcare, and all of the other things that you're going to tick, that you're going to tick. At the end of the day, let's be honest now. If you lived in Cuba under the circumstances, whether in the 1990s or 80s, whenever you probably went there, would you be happy to live there? Even though they've ticked off all of the, the anti-imperialist characteristics, would you be a happy person? Would you live happily there? No. Most of us who say we like it is because we went there for a week or a month or, maybe 6 months, if you will. But you could leave and you can go back and you can be mobile and do whatever you want to do. And that is the hypocrisy of human beings, right? So let us be very careful when we see these things about free education, free healthcare, and we don't know how the masses are living and what their civil rights are or are not. So that's what I'm saying, that we can't just jump on board and say we are with a leader if we don't understand the circumstances and how the majority of people are living. Because the oligarchs and the prime minister, and they will always be okay. Castro did not die poor, and I'm sure his family is not poor. Okay? But the people are poor, and they are destitute. Okay? And that's what we have to ask ourselves. Okay? Michael Manley didn't die rich, but he didn't die poor too. He didn't die as a poor Jamaican did. He lived in a beautiful home before he died. Right? The private sector, the same people whom he was working against and who was against him, helped him. They gave him money. Will they give you money and your children? I don't think so. Because you're not that connected, are you? Right? So we cannot follow these leaders. We have to look at what is principled, right? Because they can do things. I'm not saying now sometimes they will not be unalived, but at the same time, history has taught us that more of them get away and they can live very well. While you and I have to suffer with the policies that, look at Michael Manley's children. I don't think any of them lives in Jamaica, right? I don't think any of Michael Manley's children live in Jamaica, right? They're all abroad. And the policies, his policies and all of the destabilization efforts that destroyed Jamaica, the people have to suffer it. They have to live with it forever because Jamaica is not going to change. So let's now think about what we're talking about and begin to read history, reflect, and stop aligning ourselves with a leader who is very short-lived, by the way, right? He's going to, he's 38, he's a young man still, but, he can be short-lived. They can take him out before. I'm not saying they should, and I don't want that to happen, right? But I'm saying that it might be that he's short-lived. And the people in Burkina Faso, what they call them, Burkinabés, the Burkinabés will have to live with his policies forever. Now, as the noble says, there is nothing new under the sun. Yeah, it's nothing new. That's why we say history repeats itself. It's not history that is repeating itself. It is human nature that repeats itself. We're humans, and when we get power, oh Lord, we love to abuse it. We love to abuse it. So let's be careful of putting too much power and adoring Mr. Traore too much. Do you know when people begin to adore you, you feel something like you're a god and you feel like you stand above them? Never give a human being too much praise because it can go to the wrong part of the brain, right? And that same person can turn around and, and harm you. Right? Never praise someone and adore them too much. No leaders, we can congratulate them and say, good job, Mr. President, but don't give them that adoration that I'm seeing on the media. Everything that comes about Mr. Traore, you watch it and, and Mr. Traore, you're doing a great job, even when it's false. You haven't done your research, but he's doing a great job, right? Where is the mind? Then we have Lion Champion is saying, do you know Franklin Nyamse? Go look him up. So what is he talking about? What is new? What is he saying? Can you tell me what he's saying? And then we have they must learn to control emotions and don't let them rule your thoughts. Yeah, it's true, but one of the things about when people are exploited, their emotions are going to. But you're right, Pedro, that our minds, we should use our minds than emotions. Why do you think many people, find themselves going into adultery? Adultery, not adultery, but adultery. They go and they commit adultery because they allow their emotions to lead and not their mind. Right? So when people become extremely emotional, and it's dopamine, right? The dopamine in the brain. So when you see a politician that you love and you admire, and then you begin, and the dopamine in the brain begins to be activated, and then you don't think. First of all, you lose that frontal lobe of your brain that is responsible for reasoning, right? And that goes through the door. Now, Lion Champion is saying France has just stolen his house and assets for his talk about the AES and African liberation. Everything you're saying here, Lion Champion, we're agreeing with. All of us are agreeing with. We think that the Westerners have been evil. We think that Western people and Western imperialism have really destroyed the world. And we in the Caribbean, we know of that. Jamaica can tell you, Grenada can tell you, Guyana, all of these countries can tell you that the United States and Western imperialism have destroyed our countries. What we're saying is that even though we want liberty, we've got to be careful, because we have seen also other people in our region who have come up and said that they are liberators, like the Miss Mottley, and they're not real liberators. They're not real liberators. In fact, they're working for the system. And that's what we're seeing, that what is named Traore is functioning within a system that he has joined hands with the Russians. The Russians are not entirely, what you call it now, innocent people. He has joined heart and hand with the Chinese. The Chinese are not, innocent people either. They're not saints, right? They're not saints. And we've got to be careful. First of all, I don't know why black people in particular, are just so in love with Chinese. Why don't go to China and live there? Go to China and live there. Let us have all of us from the Caribbean just go to China and live there and see what the Chinese are going to do. So we have facts. They are working together against us. That is what they do. That is their agenda, to work against us. All you good for is talking delusional garbage, but I don't see what you're talking, Lion Champion, that is substantive. You're just talking about Western imperialism, and you're not looking at the world as a whole. And you've got to do that. You've got to broaden your horizon. Then we have Pedro Giamotti saying, to run out France and now have Russia, right? And those are the sort of, inconsistencies we see in our leaders, like the climate change agenda too. Look at the contradiction. They're telling us that we need to conserve on our electricity, on our water consumption, just about on everything, because the environment, climate change is going to come and kill us, right? At the same time, they're going to install data centers that require the consumption of electricity of a city and water of a city, of an entire city. But they're telling us that we need to conserve on these things, and we need to get rid of what we call it now, fossil fuels and all of that stuff. Yet they're also warring against each other. These people are a joke, right? They are a joke, and you're taking them seriously. I don't take them seriously. You have to take them seriously in the sense that they will kill. They will on life, okay? So you have to take them seriously. But in terms of what they say, you can't take them seriously. Okay, we have here the life of is saying here, is Iran highly religious? Is Israel highly religious? Is the USA highly religious? I'm sorry, you're not making a strong point here. Israel is highly religious. Iran is also highly religious. Okay, the United States is also highly religious. In fact, it was let me repeat that again. Let me show you that article. Did I take it off my screen? Where the Harvard University was telling us that what is happening now, there is a resurgence of religion that is actually informing political decisions. It was from Harvard University, right? It was from Harvard University, not from Andrew Tucker, right? So and you know, if you're watching the news, even on mainstream media, right? They're telling us that Trump is moving the United States into a theocracy. You see the Project 2025. You see is the Israel also saying that they are God's chosen people, so they have a right to do what they're doing in the world. And you're telling me now that it's not true what I'm saying, that the world is highly religious and religion is informing political policies? What world are you living in? Now, do I want that to happen? No, but that is the reality. Do I want to be poor? Do I want another pandemic? No, but that might happen, right? So I can't deny that it's going to happen or it is happening. And that's what you guys do. You need to separate what is happening from what you don't want to happen, because it is happening. So we have to say that it is happening. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that is delusion, land champion. When what is happening, you pretend like it's not happening because you want to live in this la la land. Okay? And that is delusion now. That is delusional. So you don't know anything. You have indoctrinated, but you don't know what you're talking about, land champion. What are you talking? I've not seen you made an interesting comment right now. Yeah, and nothing is wrong. Everybody's religious. Everybody's religious because you believe in something. Whether or not you think you do, everybody is religious. Whether you believe in climate change or you believe in nothing, but nobody never believes in nothing. People believe in something. Whether it's Pan-Africanism, whether it's your education, whether it's your nationalism, all of these things are religious. And that is why Miss Mia Mottley, and let me just look at this, by you saying that, let's look at the false religion of climate change. Let me just share this with you. It's a recent article that was written, and I would like to show you that, all right? Because let me just share this with you quickly. So, because we have to get the facts together, because people look at religion in this very narrow sense of the thing that, oh, you're not religious, or because the world tell you that you're not, but you are. Now, then we have Jubilee Center, and this is by Dr. Mills. And he says, watch out for false prophets. By their fruit, you recognize them. Every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruits. And he's quoting from the Bible here. But listen to what he says here. Climate alarmism is often spoken of in religious terms. I repeat that. Climate alarmism is often spoken of in religious terms. The connection naturally springs to mind when considering the priestess of Gaia. Gaia, boy, look up that, at climate demonstrations or the cult-like statements of protesters justifying their latest acts of cultural iconoclasm or infrastructure sabotage. And then he begins to say, given the over danger of religious excess in this area, one might have expected Christians in the public eye to be circumspect in endorsing such mania. Because it is what? It is religion, right? So you will say that Miss Mia Mottley is not religious because she's not going to church. She is whatever she is, but she's religious. Because her thing in climate change is the worship of the environment. It's Gaia worship, which is the worship of the environment. And when you study the secret societies, many of these secret societies, that is what they believe in too. The worship of the trees, of the rocks, of the stones, right? You'll be surprised what people take as their gods. So be careful when people tell you that they're not religious, because everybody is. But our expression of religiosity, we demonstrate in different ways. Some might go to church and they might hallelujah and they do that. That's their religious practice, right? They have to go to church every day. Some go to the mosque, some go to wherever they go to, right? And some of you sit on YouTube channels forever and you're worshiping that form too, because you're not, that is the center of your life. Some of you worship your politicians. They are messiahs. And that's what we're looking at, the cult-like personalities. You cannot live without them. You can't go to bed without hearing from Miss Mia Mottley. You've got to hear her fiery rhetoric, because that is your goddess, right? You don't understand that anything we give undue attention to, right? That is your religion. That is your God. That is your goddess. So nobody, including the atheist who says atheist, is irreligious, but that he does it or she does it in a way that might not be traditional. Well, Land Champion, you're free to join whatever podcast that you think is actually what you call it now, broad, but I don't think you are. So I think that you should join the podcast that makes you feel happy, who tells you about blackness, and blackness is better than anything better than sliced bread, right? Because that is not true, and that is not going to give you any satisfaction. It's going to really lead you to mental illness. In fact, many people who have this black every day, they're mentally ill, right? Because blackness is not a religion. Neither is whiteness, right? Because human beings are flawed creatures, and we should not try to say that one is better than the other. Yes, we can highlight two people and say that this person, is not as, friendly and whatever, but we don't know human hearts, so we have to be very careful. So we have, yes, we must have put a burden, seems saying like that, on one individual. Look up Malcolm and King. Yeah, and even, you're right, even we should not put a burden on, because when we put that burden on them, because they're individuals, it kills them quickly, right? Because it's just too much burden, right? They can't carry so much burden on one person, whether it's me or it's you. People should not, even parents, sometimes parents are burdened by their children, they just too much. Can you imagine it's 3 they have, or 6 children, and they feel so burdened because they have to take care of the needs of these children and whatever. Can you imagine the world wanting to depend on you? What if you make a mistake? You're a human being, and that's why when somebody is found in sexual, some sexual whatever, people begin to say, wow, and they get so disappointed, and, how could it be? How could he do that? How could she do that? Because you've put too much faith and confidence in one person. Right? I'm not saying we should not hold them to account, but we should not place a lot of burden thinking that Miss Mia Mottley can just change Barbados and make it become a prosperous nation overnight. She cannot. Even if she was well-intentioned, even if she was really authentic, she was not going to be. She can't do that. Physically speaking, she can't do that. She can lay some groundwork, don't get me wrong, but she can't change the country overnight. And Trevor is saying, Pedro, but it's good to hear the perspective. Can't deny religion is anything honest. And as we're saying that the entire world is now religious, but it's religion in different ways, expressed in different ways. In terms, it can be science. Science can also be a religion. What happened during the pandemic was religion, and they're showing all the data, and the data was religious, because whatever the data says, that is what is truth. That is what is facts. And they're saying, oh, you have to listen to the facts. You have to listen to the facts. I say, okay, I'm listening to the facts, but is that the truth? Yeah, I can see what you're saying, but is that the truth? And we hear Miss Mia Mottley saying the same thing too. She's saying, listen to the facts. You've got to listen. In fact, Miss Mia Mottley is saying that the 2 greatest threats that we have in the world today are misinformation and people not willing to listen to the facts. That's what she said. Misinformation and people who are not willing to listen to the facts. Now, the facts according to whom? Right? This is what I'm saying? And that is why, Land Champion, you have to read many sources, because what you're reading from your source might be the facts according to what they have said, and nothing is wrong with that, the narrative, right? But what do you read another perspective to say that those who are not Muslims, right? Do you read another religion and another perspective to see if there might be another perspective to the Muslim religion or to the Christian religion? Have you read it so that you can acquaint yourself with these things, that you can understand what is truth? Land Champion is saying, look at the figure in your beloved Western media. Burkina Faso GDP has grown since IB came to power That's the Burkina. What's his name again? Ibrahim Traoré. You have done no research at all. All you do is talk. Now let us look at the GDP thing, right? Because the GDP has grown, does it mean that the citizens are actually living an elevated form of life? No. And that's what they're using nowadays to tell us, right? They're using the GDP growth. In the Dominican Republic, for example, people talk about, the DR before the pandemic was growing every day. They're 7, 8%, 9%, 10%, and it was all this consistent growth. And the people will tell you that, oh yeah, they're saying it's growing, but it's not. I'm not seeing the growth in my life, right? So when they combine their wealth together, they can tell us with foreign investment and all that stuff. But guess what? The monies go. They can now combine all of the thing and say that this is great growth, and the monies go to another country, to a tax haven, right? Doesn't remain there. So the same thing they do with tourism and other things, and they, as we're saying, they direct investment. So yes, Lion Champion, the two are not necessarily exclusive, I should say. They're not necessarily like, because you have growth, it means that your citizens are living well. Okay, it does mean that, because sometimes a lot of countries that are growing, including Guyana, why don't I even say Guyana? Right? Guyana is growing at a rate sometimes, the last time I checked, sometimes 10, one time they said it was even 20 or above, right? Percent in terms of the GDP. But it's not being reflected in the lives of the citizens of Guyana. Okay? So I'm not saying that this is not true of Burkina Faso, but we don't know. All right? Are you a part of the Pan-Africanist Lion Champion? It seems that you are, right? So let's be very careful about economic growth. I know, Trevor, but he has sounded as though religion is bad. No, I'm not. Religion is not bad. I'm just saying to you that you can have good religion and you can have bad religion, right? Because we have seen where slavery was also religion, where the master said that the slaves were his property. So that was a religion, and yeah, we saw what happened. And if we were to say that to the IMF, the World Bank, because we are now economic slaves, right? They are also religious in their thing about the market. The neoliberalism is a religion. Neoliberalism is a religion, but people don't understand that. They think when you say have faith in the market will bring you growth without regulating and studying the market. It means that is blind religion, right? Now, there are two things we need to understand too. Let me just be very careful with this. We have conscious religion and you have blind religion, right? So nothing is wrong with religion if it is conscious. And if it leads you into having better societies, better people, right? Healthier, think well, nothing is wrong with it. I think we have been taught in school that religion is something we should look down on, and we should pay great attention and adoration to science. And we saw what science did to us recently, right? And it's not only recently. The doctors are coming out now and they're saying for years they knew that science was bogus, right? In Western science, that is. Bogus, but they kept science. They kept quiet because what could they do? They can't change the system. But when they realized now during the pandemic that they would not even listen to them, and this was life and death, they had to speak out. But if you speak to the Paul Myricks and all of these people, they will let you know that they are now realizing that much of what they studied in science, and this is one of the brightest, greatest scientists you can ever talk to, Paul Myrick, right? Yet still he's suggesting that he is disappointed because a lot of what he studied in school as the science is not true. Not true, right? So we cannot now live in a society where we are going to pit one thing. All of these things are necessary, but they must not be studied blindly. They have to be studied intelligently, and they have to help us to grow intellectually, and grow spiritually. Because our existence is what? Physical, mental, and spiritual. And it depends on what you feed your mind a lot on, then that is what is going to be your spiritual development or lack thereof. Okay, so let's now begin to be very careful of looking down on people who say they're religious, whether they're Muslim or they're Hindu or they're Christians or whatever they are. right? And then we look up to people who say that they know science and that they're educated at universities when they are not also, because you have to have an understanding of all of these spheres because they function, they have a role in our lives. Now, I'm not telling you what you need to do or what you need not to do. I'm just telling, I would tell you what to eat and what not to eat. Okay, what I can say to you, you must eat good food, right? And good food, good physical food, good mental food, and good spiritual food. Okay, because some of us are starving spiritually. Then we have the where am I? Land champion, that's the only word. The man is delusional. Yeah, I'm delusional. And what are you? Are you conscious? Because I'm not hearing what you're saying. What is your take? It's just Western civilization against Africa, and that is not the world. The world is not centered around that. Heard that many, lived that so many years, had to remove myself from it because guess what? That will send you crazy. And a lot of people in your world are crazy and delusional because Africa is not going to save the world. Neither is Europe. Neither is Asia going to save the world. All right. So when you can tell me who is going to save the world and make you live in this sort of utopic society where we'll all live to get along, you tell me. You tell me. All right, because Africa is not going to do it. Neither is Barbados. Neither is Jamaica. Neither is any of these countries. Okay, why are you talking about that puppet Obama now? Always talked about Obama because I've always talked about these people on all of my shows. Are you listening to my shows? Talk about Obama from day one. Go look how the Western media talks about Ibra. I have seen that. And as I say, and I will agree with you, Leon Champion, that they use a lot of hyperbole when you talk about Ibrahim Traoré and they demonize him, right? So, but what I am aware of is the Hegelian dialectic, that they're playing with our minds, pretending as if they're against him. I'll give you this, Leon Champion. The Western media also pretensively speak against Trump too, right? The left-wing ones, right? They pretend as if they're anti-Trump, but they're not. Do you know that? The Western media is for Trump. They are for everything that in fact, they're giving him the limelight. They're praising him, but they're doing it in a way as if they're masking that we are trying here to liberate you, to expose you as to what Trump is doing, but behind the scenes, they are working together. Now, how can that be? Because that is how they control our minds. And that's why you have to be, Land Champion, vigilant. And I don't think you are. I think you have been played and you're taking one side. I'm saying to you, you can't take one side when you're living in such a global, this complex geopolitical world that we are in now. You can't take one side. This is not a sports match. This is real. This is real. This includes people's lives. And this is life and death too. We can die because of the policies that they're making. So we can't afford ourselves to be so captivated by what they're telling us and they're not telling us. So we have, if I was running a PSYOP, I would not be reading your comments. I would not be listening to anybody who speaks and disagrees with me because it would be PSYOP, right? But what I'm looking at, we're trying to ask some critical questions and to say we're not taking any sides. But you're taking a side, and the same side you're taking, Land Champion, is controlled by the CIA. Yeah, go and study that. Black and all these things controlled by the CIA. Because the CIA understood that they could not use black people like the likes of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. As soon as they died, they realized that they had to take over the black leaders, including the academics in academia. So a lot of what you're hearing and studying, I'm not saying all is a lie now, and you can benefit in some cases if you're a critical thinker from a Black and African Studies department, but I'm saying you cannot just feed your mind and think that Black studies and Blackness is going to save the world. It's not going to do it. Neither is whiteness. Neither is yellowness, or whatever your color is. Not going to save the world. America is constantly talking bad about China, and Trump just went there and is trying to make people think China is the AI boogeyman. Right, and they're on board with it. Can't let the talks fool you. China already has soft rule. Correct. Right. And they are on board with it. They're on board with the AI and the control, because who controls the media? The CIA. Who controlled the vaccines and the virus within the Wuhan laboratory? The CIA. Weren't they talking against China during that time when they were involved with China in the making of the virus? Yeah. When are you going to wake up, people? When are you going to wake up? That not because the media speak badly about a person or a country does not mean that they're not in bed with them. Look at this too. And Miss Mia Mottley brought out the contradiction. She said, and rightly so, when they were asking her why is Barbados it was in bed with China, she says, look here, we have had diplomatic relations with China from the 1970s. And then she went on to ask the journalist, she said, and the United States, Chinese people own a lot of their assets. So she said, look, so what's the contradiction? Why does the United States, speaking badly about the Chinese, telling them that they don't want them in our region, yet the United States has a lot of Chinese investment there? What is this contradiction? Because that's how they behave, to fool you, to deceive you. And you think that they're against each other when they're working together against you. Okay? So your mind, Lion Champion, you need to exercise more thinking. I wish you will. I wish you would, rather. So we have Trump. Trump, who cares about Trump? Trump is an enemy to all black people. You think Trump is the only one who's an enemy to all black people? Don't you think Obama was too? Don't you think, Clinton was? Don't you think George W. Bush was an enemy of black? Don't you think the entire American system and empire is also against black people? So I just wouldn't single out Trump. He's the one who talks it on what is on his mind. The other ones, they work behind the scenes and they do the same things, but they talk so nicely that we think that they are anti-racist when they're not. Okay? They're not. How many years they weren't functioning since independence? They're great at deconstructing than constructing. Yes, agreed. Then we have Lion is saying, and we respect what you're saying, Lion Champion. We're just here to challenge thinking and to challenge orthodoxy. We have to think now, and this program is about thinking. I know it's hard to think, and years ago when I read that these people were not necessarily against each other, that they were working together, it made sense to me too, because globalization, one world government, would they be working against each other? No. Right? It means one world government means that they're coming together. They're working together. Now, how they're working together is something that you and I have to study. Right? But we don't want to study it because it's easier to take one side, run with it, because it doesn't require any intellectual acuity. Okay? Multipolar world is the only way forward. American empire and the West must be defeated. So are you suggesting that Russia doesn't want a one world government? Are you suggesting that Russia and China are not on board with climate change? And the climate change agenda is global agenda. And that is why they're going to get you, Lion Champion. People like you, they're going to get. Because just like the pandemic, when everybody was doing the same thing, and we forgot about what we were enemies or we were friends, right? Because the virus united all of us. Yeah, a virus united the entire world. The entire world cannot be united under any other circumstances. But the virus and the protocol surrounding the virus could have united the entire world. And this is what I'm saying. Aren't you seeing it? Is it something strange that a virus, a pandemic, could unite the entire world? And the climate change is going to do the same thing. Because they have the ability through machines right now, as we're seeing, to cause natural disasters, what we think are natural disasters, right? So when something happens and it's actually damaging the world, the entire world, don't you think they're going to unite? Don't you think that they are going? And that is what Miss Mia Mottley is saying, Lion Champion, that we need to put away our differences and begin to talk about things that matter, that unite us, such as climate change. She said it. Let's not talk about China and the United States and who is investing in Jamaica or Barbados or who is investing in the United States. Let's talk about climate change. And that's what she said. Great. And the entire world is deceived. But I'm the fact of the matter, I'm so sad that the entire world is deceived. But I think to some extent, because we love lies, and the Bible is correct, that man loves darkness rather than light. So they would rather embrace darkness than embrace light. And that is why destruction is going to come upon the world. Not because that we are wonderful people. And that's what we think too. We think we're wonderful people and the politicians are evil and they've come to get us and we're so wonderful and we should be saved. When we're wicked. Because if we don't want to accept truth, we're wicked just like the politicians. Do you know that? We are just as wicked and evil as they are when we reject truth. Because we're so tied to our belief system that we don't want to say, do you know how many things I had to change? And, and talk to many people too. Many of their world perspective, they have had to change because they realize that it is true. It is true. It's going to hurt you. It's going to affect you. You have to grapple with it night and day. But eventually, it satisfies. Truth satisfies eventually. It makes you uncomfortable at first, but eventually it will satisfy your brain. The African elites are Western puppets. Absolutely. This is why they hate IB and AES, because these leaders are awakening Black people. Yes, and that might be so, but we still don't know yet. We don't have enough information on Mr. Traore, Leon Champion, to suggest that he might not be a part of them. But based on what we're seeing now, the perception, and perception is not necessarily reality. Perception can pose as reality, but it's not necessarily reality. Okay? American AFRICOM doesn't start a PSYOP campaign unless they fear they are losing the narrative. That can be true, as I'm suggesting, and it also is a way of also controlling the minds of people, because all the things surrounding Trump on the mainland too was a PSYOP. With Trump and trying to kill him, and all of that was PSYOP. And that's why people voted for him, because they said the same thing, Land Champion, that, the US wouldn't have gone after Trump and trying to kill him if he weren't authentic, right? And all of that was mumbo jumbo, right? It was just mumbo jumbo, okay? Then we have Steve Knight is saying, I believe too many of us are waiting for the next Malcolm or King that probably will not happen because some of us are not willing to kill. Yes, and that is true. And the fact is too that during Malcolm X and King, as I said earlier on the program, that we're not living in the same world that they lived in, where the world was less interconnected. We're living in a world now that is connected globally. Right? So if King and Malcolm were to resurface, they would also have to change their strategy, maybe change their rhetoric, right? Because we're living in a completely different world. But people are still believing that we're in the 60s, we're in the 50s, we're in the 70s, even the 90s. We're not even in the 90s. We are in post 9/11 world. And that world is a connected world. Awakening Black people curse from selling their own. We know our Black leaders are quick at selling us out. If we're going to have another King or Malcolm, we need to protect these people, which we're not, because people tend to go after what is monetary, what is financially. Back in the days of the Kings and the Malcolm X, they weren't doing it because they wanted to be rich. They were doing it because they thought that this is their calling. This is their purpose. Our politicians, for the most part, very few of them today think that that is their calling. They think that they're there for the money and for the power, right? So that's why they go into power today, and they probably have $1 million in the bank or $1,000 in the bank. And by the time they leave, they're multimillionaires, they're billionaires, whatever they are, right? Because they're not working for us. But people still think that they're working for us, right? Man is not the same as Ibrahim Traoré. That's what you're saying, Ibrahim Traoré. Africa has resources and is not dependent on America. Stop using this week. Oh, nobody has entire, even though we have resources, land champion, but nobody is independent and can live independently outside of the other. We all need each other to survive, right? And that's why he's still using, as I'm saying, the American institution of the IMF and the World Bank, because he can't survive without them, or so he thinks. Right? So let's not fool ourselves that we can live onto ourselves. Not in this globalized world now. Right? So yeah, I see what you're saying. And I understand what you're saying in terms of that Jamaica is not rich in natural resources like Burkina Faso. And you're right. 100% right, land champion. But at the same time, you need much more than natural resources. You need, and even if Jamaica were rich in natural resources, she would still have to, have some sort of trade with other countries to be able to survive. We're living in a global village right now. Let's wake up. Global world, global village. We're not living onto ourselves. Trevor saying, Pedro, maybe it's just his stance that shows itself and robs some people, because if he was against it, he wouldn't mention his belief nor his statement on the foundation that religion gives to each society. Yeah, well said. And then we have Stephen. They good at killing their one another. Yeah. And that is true. And Peter, welcome to the live. Haven't seen you for a long time, Peter. How can one man do it? History shows that there are many cases where one man did change things. The problem is to stop things from reverting. I don't think one man has ever changed it. Whether you're referring to the one there, the Haitian Revolution with Toussaint, they needed their people. He had other people around him. And that is what happened to when afterwards he was betrayed by, I think, one of his own people. And that's why they caught him and sent him over. Marcus Garvey, who was also trying to change the world in terms of Black people, he was also betrayed. All right. So if we don't work together, one person cannot. That's why Marcus Garvey, as much as he was one of the greatest Black men in the history or of the 20th century, but he actually could not have done it alone, right? He needed people because, even to betray, common trust, you need people, right? We need people to survive. That's for sure. Leaders need people. You should talk about Ibrahim Traoré. You have not done your research. There is no research to do about Ibrahim Traoré. We said in the earlier stage that much of what is on Ibrahim Traoré is AI generated. I said it very carefully, and there's very little on him, right? Very little on him, that he just became president when he was 35 in 2022, and he has made all of these progressive reforms, right? And as you're saying, Lion Champion, which you're just repeating the same narrative that they're saying. He has done these reforms, standing up to Western imperialism and all of what you're saying, but there's nothing substantive. There's nothing to say. Where did he come from? How was he able to overthrow that government and all of that? Who helped him to have done that? As we're suggesting, one man cannot change a system like that. And Burkina Faso, for a long time, has had a military government and military governance, right? So the fact of the matter is that he didn't do it by himself. Who aided him? That's the question we'd like to ask, and we're not really getting all the information that we want to have. But there's a little information on Ibrahim Traoré. And if you know me, when I want to do research, I'll read everything that I can find, lay my hands on. Very few things talk about Ibrahim Traoré. So he's a mystical person, right? But, we have to accept what they give us for now. But I'm saying be critically minded. Accept it, but don't accept it fully. America is what we are living now. Look at what the CIA has done around the world. But I think, Lion Champion, you are just, putting something into your ears. We're saying America is not the only. America is the dominant, is the dominant empire right now. But what you are not saying is that there are other empires, and they do work together in some cases, right? And that is what we need to understand. So we're not living in this one the decade of the 1960s, where you could say that, you're not living in that decade anymore. We're living in a world now where once you go against one, several come up and they crush you, right? They come up and they crush you. That's what they do. Why would China and the United States, create a pandemic if they are enemies? Are you asking yourself that question? Why did they create a pandemic when they're enemies? Okay. Now we have, with the switch of global masters, one can live in a better condition and still be a slave to another person. Correct. Even rather, if you get new roads, let me see if I'm not reading this, and stadiums, buses, etc., what is free? Nothing is free. And we're not free. People were not free. Talking about, independent journalism, as I was telling you, all of that depends on, what platform you're on. Is the algorithm going to push your thing? You're working for somebody. You're not free. They control your movements. They control what you need to say. We're not living in a free world, right? We're not free as we think we are. And everything people do and whatever if they pay you, they own you. Right? And so whether it's YouTube paying you, or it is your boss that you work for paying you, or whatever, and the presidents and the prime ministers, they work for the people who send them to power, right? The financiers, they work for them, so they have to do their bidding, just like you have to do the bidding of your boss. And yet still we expect them to do these great things, and you can't do it on your job, right? You can't do whatever you want on your job because your boss is paying you, and it comes with a job description, right? When they accept the job as prime minister and presidents, they also have a job description, right? How America became an empire, the Black academia term it so. Well, they became an empire from the 1890s. We dealt with that, but we could do it another time, in which, America was both, it can be divided into two imperial dimensions, right? One, slavery, right? And the whole matter of the United States came to, the Pilgrims went to America and they took over that land from the indigenous people. Eventually they took over Mexico, Guam, Puerto Rico, and so we call it a continental empire. The United States actually, took over a large swath of North America, right? And then afterwards they went to Cuba to help Cuba to gain its independence from Spain, right? And they took over all of those countries, Puerto Rico and whatever. So from that time, the Philippines, also American imperial undertaking in the Philippines in the 1890s too. Right, so we have that, and I think that in the 1890s was when America transitioned from being a continental empire to becoming a global empire. But after World War II, that was the sort of clutch now that America gave that power over to her, and after England fell as the world empire, then America took up the reins of the power, and she is now the global empire. Now, how long will that last? That's the question we need to ask. We don't know. Now, Pedro is saying, yes, I saw that China is definitely ahead in tech, especially AI, and lots of agricultural and social improvements. So I don't blame America. They do what they do. Right. And the thing about it, too, is that they work together because, they are going to be the ones to control us. China, Peter is saying, has no poverty, but America is riddled with it. Please do not compare America with China in this context. They can be compared because they're both in bed together. And as Miss Mia Mottley said, China has lots of assets in America and vice versa. So they can be compared. As we're saying, these nation states are not working together on their own. They're working together to complete the agenda of having us into a one world government, right? So if we're going to have a one world government, don't they need to work together? Yes, and they are. Okay. Now, what they might be against in terms of their little differences here and there, it means which one wants to be the predominant power in controlling the one world government. But they're not working towards freeing you. You got that? That's what we have to understand. So this is, so we have facts, and Trevor is saying remember, the deindustrialization built China by taking manufacturing there to save the planet. Now, that is what they tell us, but there is more to what built them than just they're becoming an industrialized nation. But that is one aspect of it. Yes, certainly is. Right? But, the thing about it is that from Zbigniew Brzezinski did say that that is the new power that they want to form the new technocracy that we're moving into right now. So this was an agenda that was planned years in advance. But China was considered to be this, what you call it now, dictatorship, and America being a democracy. So the United States now had to take time and understand how she was going to move herself into that technocratic era, the era of what you call it now, globalization and dictatorship tyranny. But she's using China now because China is what? Is economically strong. So people like to see people who are economically strong, because we think everything is well with them, and we don't know how they got their money in the first place, but we just like to see wealth, right? And then you go to China, oh wow, look at these buildings, look at the technology, and you love that, and you don't know how it came about. Right? That is what we have to understand. We've got to read, and we got to look at what laid the foundation. And certainly it was not just because they became industrial and they became so rich overnight. Remember too that when the United States accepted China in the World Trade Organization, that was the clinch also. You have to do your research on that. Okay? And all other nations were very, very upset with the United States. And another thing you have to understand too, a lot of the barriers to trade that the United States set up for Jamaica, for Barbados, for Trinidad, and so forth, China, they exempted for China. China said that they would not accept some of the barriers to trade that the United States imposed on other countries. So when we are comparing ourselves with China and whatever, we don't understand the advantages that America gave to China, even though they are actually pretending to be against each other. And I come back to the question, if they are really enemies as we think, as we are being portrayed, why did they create a pandemic? Why did they work together to create a pandemic? Let me know that. What great things in America do? Kill Lumumba and destroy Congo, destroy Caribbean. I am sure Land Champion is in America. I get the impression that Land Champion lives in America. And I get the impression that Land Champion benefits from whatever good that the United States offers there. So, what are you telling me? Carry out a genocide in Palestine, death squad in Latin America, steal. All of those are the bad things she has done. And we have recognized, we've said these multiple times on this channel, right? But what I can't say is that she has never done anything good, because that would be a lie. Because we can say that many people, including in our Caribbean territories, right? Do you know how many doctors who thought they could never have been a doctor in our system, or nurses, or educators, or whatever, went to America, right? And in a short time, they were able to achieve their dreams, right? So we can't always say that America has been a devil forever, right? Because she has done some good things, right? But she has done some terrible things, demonic things. And that is what, on this channel, we're not here to be one-sided. We're here to be balanced in our criticism. So while be critical of America, but we also have to give her flowers where they are due, where she deserves them. Wake up, I do not put all my hope in IB, but he is a beacon of light. And I'm not saying that he is not to Land Champion. Don't you think I'm attacking, and that's what people think I'm attacking Miss Miyamaki too, or they think I'm attacking China. I'm not attacking these whether China or Miss Miyamaki. I'm just looking at the policies and calling them out, right? And saying we can't put our confidence in one thing or one nation or one political actor. He and the other AES leaders know what they are facing, correct? And he's right to stand up in principle, not to be cowards and face it head on. Can't disagree with you on this, Land Champion. I can't. Can I? No, and I think everybody would agree with you on this platform. Sorry, let me just blow my nose. Okay, sorry about that. Now we have Algeria had the highest standard of living in Africa prior to his public execution. Hillary Clinton, we saw, and he died. Correct? Yeah. Well, another of America's, and there are lots of them, right? Lots of them, because once you are an empire, you're an empire, and you've been around for a certain time. We have a resume, right? So all of what you're saying to me, Justice, read them all, watched many documentaries on them, right? But I know that. But the fact of the matter is that I also know that she has done some good things. Now, why Egypt closed its gates to the Palestinians, I think. Okay. And Russia is defeating NATO. And we have here Iran has escalatory dominance in the Persian Gulf. Let us see how this is going to end up. It's something that is so bad that the United States wants to control the Strait of Hormuz and is creating a lot of havoc in the region, which is sending up oil prices and it's going to make our lives a living hell, right? So, but the other day I did read, Justice, that the Iranian oligarchs, oil oligarchs, are benefiting from it. This is something that we will never understand. How is it that the people, the ordinary people, are going through hell while the reigning oligarchs of these countries are profiting from the hell that we're going through? Right? So all of this, again, is taking sides. We've got to look at the full picture. We've got to look at who is benefiting, who is not. Right? Because not everything that happens in a country means, therefore, that everybody, including the leaders, are ailing or suffering. The leaders are more than likely not. I think we might have to do a part 2 to this conversation. Right? Yeah, you're right. I think we do. Cuba, CU has a higher literacy rate and longer life expectancy than the United States. Yeah, but why don't you go and live there? Right? Go and live there, Justice. Because is that what people just need? Do we only need to have a high literacy rate and to have access to what you call it now, a free healthcare, or do human beings need other things? Right? We have to look at that, because you have some people who are literate in other countries and they're making life for themselves, But the Cubans, when I went there and you see the high level of literacy rate as you're suggesting, but they are not living any quality life, then right? It's like having high GDP. Your country has all this high GDP rate, and the quality of the lives of the citizens is below standard. Then what's the sense? What is the sense? And these are the things we have to ask. And again, we just like to look at superficial things, run with it. We're knowledgeable. I'm knowledgeable. I have all these facts. Cuba has high literacy rate, higher than the United States, higher than the region. And we don't want to look at other factors. And that is not proper research. That is not proper and thorough research. Because, the human beings, their lives, there are lots of things that they need, that they should have. Lots of wants that they should have, and they don't have. So I would want to live like the Cubans. I am telling you the truth. I would not, just because I want my country to be an anti-imperialist, and I'm living like that. No. I'm not saying our lives too is much better, but I would prefer it over to Cuba. Yeah, I still prefer our life that we're living in Barbados and Jamaica and Trinidad and perhaps in the United States. I would prefer to live that life, even though there are lots of flaws to it too. That life I would prefer. But what if Cuba, ladies and gentlemen, and Burkina Faso? But let us look at Cuba. What if Cuba is where they want to lead us into? Say, because they're telling us about free healthcare and climate change and all these progressive policies. But what if they want us to lead very poor lives as the Cubans are living? While the elites, the Cuban Castros and all these elites, they're living wealthy, having investments in Switzerland, right? While the people are suffering. How wonderful. And you are going to adore Fidel Castro, right? And viva la revolución. Viva la revolución. And you talk like that, and you feel good. But the people están sufriendo. The people are suffering. Now, did anyone think Vietnam would defeat America? You have to start somewhere or continue being a slave and a coward. Well, let us talk about Vietnam. The United States of America did not want to stop the war in Vietnam. In fact, the United States has never wanted to stop a war. The United States, in its understanding of defeat is not that, that the United States doesn't have any deaths. They don't care about the deaths of their soldiers. What they care about is the continuation of wars so that their arms can be sold, right? And lots of profits can go into the military-industrial complex. So the purpose of an empire land champion is wars. They want wars. They don't want wars to end. The war in Vietnam, not Vietnam, in Iran, they don't want it to stop. The media is giving you that illusion, land champion, that the United States is defeated and they want to stop it and who is whatever. And your adrenaline goes up. Oh yeah, well, Iran is defeating the United States and all of that stuff. But if you understand that wars is like the engine of all empires, without wars, an empire is going to fall. And with wars, they also collapse. And that is the contradiction. With wars, an empire cannot be without wars, rather. An empire cannot be an empire because wars sustain an empire. That is what gives them the impetus and the pretext to remain an empire. Right? That's why the United States has to go around and search for wars. Some of the wars are literally, most of the wars, 95% of US wars are fabricated. Right? Because they need wars to sustain the empire. That's what we have to understand. They need wars to sustain the US empire. All empires do, not only the United States. Okay? Vietnam now, if it had not been for the citizens of the United States, remember we had stronger leaders then. We had the Malcolm X's, as we were saying, Martin Luther King, and lots of civil rights activists and American citizens. They were more alert, more educated, and they rejected the notion of imperialism then. Americans of today, they are not as well educated as the Americans of yesteryear, who understood what wars could do to their state and that wars was going to collapse the state entirely. So they're just there and they will say that they don't agree here and there. Another thing is too, that post 9/11, most of US citizens' civil rights have been withheld. So they are not able, notice that people can't demonstrate as they used to demonstrate anymore because ICE can take you up or things can happen to you. Right? So we must understand that the Vietnam War stopped because US citizens placed a lot of pressure. The civilians put a lot of pressure on the United States to end it. But it's not because the US, the powers that be wanted to end it. They wanted it to continue. Okay? Even though they were so-called being defeated. But your understanding of defeat and the military people's understanding of defeat are two different things. You're thinking because you saw 10,000 US soldiers died, it was defeat. To them, it's not. It's just, what do they call it? Collateral damage. They call this collateral damage. Right? And they send your boys out, they die, you cry, and they laugh because they're getting money. Money's coming in. And thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming into their coffers. But you are thinking that this is how it runs. It's win and ban and blah, blah, blah. And they're liking it. They're liking it. Do you understand that your leaders don't think like you? Do you understand that oligarchs don't think like you? And that's why they have to be sent to Harvard. They have to join secret societies because they have to be indoctrinated into how they have to be in the CIA and all these organizations, right? So that they can be indoctrinated to become cold creatures. And you're wondering, why are they so cold? Because that is how they have been educated and acculturated. Then we have China produces more renewable energy than the rest of the world combined. But what is renewable? What? Yes, they're and they also do a lot of fossil fuels too, right? They do use a lot of fossil fuels because, as we're saying here, Justice, they tell us on one side that they want renewable, that they want us to conserve the environment. At the same time, they're doing other things. Look at the whole matter of renewables. It's going to cost more fossil fuels. It's going to cost more energy. As we're seeing now, the data centers that they're trying to set up, Justice, is going to cause much more consumption of water and electricity. Right? So where's that coming from? Renewables? I don't know. Do they even know what renewables mean? I don't know. God bless the AES. We hope that God bless them too. We're not here saying that they should not be blessed here now. Justice true, but don't use them. Then we have the Traore works with China, which is a much more progressive place than the US. Jamaica can negotiate about the highway toll, and I'm sure they will get a positive result. They've never been able to do that. Right? The highways have been a sore in Jamaica for many years, and it's not going to go down. They might reduce it, or well, they might keep it at the rate for a while, and then what they do next year now, when you're not paying attention, they put down 3 times what they said. Or if a hurricane comes or something happens, they say, well, it's a hurricane or something. They know what to do, and you will never win them. Never. Before Justice said, in 1979, the literacy rate in Iran was 35. Now the literacy rate above 90%. Yeah, and but I'm saying to you that there are more things that we need more than the literacy rate, as I'm suggesting. And literacy in what? Are they conditioned, or can they read, multiple sources? All these things, literacy is important, but we have to also know literacy in what? Because people say they can read, but what do they read? What do they have access to read? What information are they granted? Look at Cuba. They don't have access to read what we're reading. They only can read what they permit them to read. That's not true literacy. Do you know that? That is not true literacy. True literacy is when you can read whatever you want to read. All right? That is true literacy. You seem to be happy to be a slave. How do you break a system if you do sacrifice? What do you mean by sacrifice? Yeah. What do you mean by that? By the way, many of our prime ministers are, I would think that Ibrahim Traoré is a Freemason. I can bet 100% that he is. And by the way, land champion, in the Freemasonry, they practice human sacrifice. So you tell me. Traore killed to rule, and Mia cooked the books to rule. Very, very well said. And that's another thing too. He came through the military conquest of the former leader. I'm wondering if that is going to happen to him. I hope it doesn't, right? If there's going to be another leader who's coming up, and that might just, and all of this military junta, how is he changing Burkina Faso? Is this from one military junta to the next military junta? I don't know. Cuba has been under U.S. sanctions since 1959. What's new? What is that? Contextualize it. What information are you telling us that we don't know? Some super being in the sky is not going to help you this need. Well, the fact of the matter is, let me contradict what you're saying. We need some superpower, some superhuman right now, champion, to rid us of what we're seeing, because obviously they are using supernatural powers too. If you were at my live last night, where we talk about AI, and we understand that this AI thing is much more than human, and that's why they're also indoctrinating us, talking about the aliens and talking about UFOs. These are supernatural beings that they're telling us that they are in connection with. So yes, Mr. Lion Champion, we do need supernatural miracle, supernatural power to stop what they're doing right now. Human beings are not going to stop that, because they have some powerful things that they can use against us. Cuba abolished slavery in 1886. Yeah, they were the second to last country to abolish slavery, just before Brazil in 1888. Nothing new under the sun. You're telling me, Justice. U.S. invaded Cuba in 1898. They did, and that was when the Spanish-American War. Remember now that we also have to contextualize this to Justice, that they went there in 1898 because upon the request of the Cubans who wanted to get rid of the Spanish, because they didn't want to give up Cuba and the United States, but the United States, did it because of its intention to control the Americas, and it wanted Spain out of the region. It wanted to fulfill the whole matter of the manifest destiny, right? So it says, oh, we'll go down to Cuba and free them of the Spanish, right? But afterwards, we're going to remain there and we're going to let them know that we're in control. But Cubans didn't want that. Cubans just wanted the help to get so it's like what Burkina Faso is doing, right? Getting rid of one empire, which was then the Spanish Empire, which was a weak empire, by the way, by that time. It was weak. Right? It was an inconsequential power, but the fact of the matter, the United States wanted all sort of challenge to its power out of the region. So it went to Cuba and it helped the Cubans in 1898, but it didn't tell them that it wanted to control them. Right? And that is how the United States and also other empires behave. Is Russia doing the same thing in Burkina Faso? And is Russia helping the Burkinabes to get rid of Western imperialism, while just like the United States, will she remain in Burkina Faso and try to control? I mean, history is something we have to read, and try to think about. Free healthcare is in Barbados, but you spend 72 hours or more in A&E, right? And even though free healthcare is in Barbados, and Barbados, by the way, is an educated, very orderly country. And if the Barbadians, I'm understanding, are leaving Barbados, the professionals, and they go to country that they might have to pay for health care, can you imagine? So we just don't need healthcare, and Barbados is also a highly literate country, but we need much more than that. We need more than just being literate and having access to free healthcare. Good, don't get me wrong, I'm not undermining those. We need those too, but we need more than those things. And no other prime minister tried to reverse Manley's mandate. Yeah, and they can't, because the whole system is just once they've used you to destroy a system, it's almost it's impossible. Right now, Cuba and Venezuela, it can't go back. They're not going to be better. It's going to be what it is, right? It won't go back. Jamaica won't be back better anytime soon. Is what it is. Do you not understand that America destroyed Jamaica? Of course I understand that. What book are you reading? Because you don't seem to be able to connect the dots. One of the things I'm seeing, Land Champion, I'm not sure how old you are, and experience is wisdom. I read all of that, used to feast my mind on that and what the United States did to other countries. And I still know that they did some terrible things to Jamaica, to Cuba, to all the countries in Latin America, in Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador. If you actually tell some of the things I read, you'd be, wow. But the fact of the matter is that we can't also deny that she has done some good. So I'm just saying to you that she's mixed the good with the bad. And we have to explore where she has done bad, but we can't say now that she's entirely demonic and entirely a Satan, as some people say, right? Because she has done good things and she has done bad. Probably more bad things I can say. Maybe we can say more bad than good, but we can't also deny the good. Because let's remember too that many of our people in the Caribbean, our governments have done them bad too. Our education system prevented them from moving on. Our economic system prevented them from moving on. It suffocated their growth, and they were able to move to America, even without imperialism, even without U.S. imperialism, right? The way how our education system has been designed, and the U.S. didn't design our education system, by the way, but the way how our education system has been designed is that it has been designed to suppress people who are trying to elevate their standards, because the elites there want to maintain their power. And we're so small, so they don't want so many of us to be empowered. So we have to leave. And many of us leave to the United States. And for the most part, I'm not saying that some of us haven't done well, but for the most part, many of us have done much better than we did in our respective countries, right? So we have to recognize that too, right? Let's not be research also in some of the things that we have learned. Democracy, it might not be what it might not do what it preaches, right? But sometimes we learn some of the theories coming from her, and yeah. So in some cases it has been good, in many cases it has been bad. So we agree with that. You're too negative about Traore. Negativity is a blight. Why is it that when people are critically think, that's why we don't have critical thinkers in our world today. When we critique something, a country, oh, you don't love the country, oh, you don't love the person. So how are we going to grow if we are not able to look at things and to question things? How are we going to, if we don't know much, if Peter, you don't know much, you have not told me anything new or told anybody on this platform, neither has Dan Champion, anything new that we have not read about Ibrahim Traoré. Nothing. You have not said anything new. You have not presented a new information, a new book, a new article that has been out about Traoré and what he's doing that other people have not done, or what we have not heard he's doing. Free healthcare. Yeah, he has taken over the gold mines and he's now putting it into the economy. We've heard all of that story. He's fighting against Western imperialism. Oh, that's not new, is it? Right? We have many videos online to tell us that. Many articles are there to tell us that too. Right? So what we're saying here is that we know little of him. Right? We don't know much of him. We don't know much of anybody, and it appears to be a mystery. You need to take precaution. That's what we're saying here. Before Obama came into power, I was telling people that he was not going to be different than the other presidents of the United States. People said I was anti-Black, I was anti-Obama, because I questioned what he was all about. And I also read voraciously about him. And I realized that he was connected to the system. But people would rather, because he's Black, he sounds good. His rhetoric he's an eloquent man. He's an orator. He sounds good. He sounds like he wants to, get justice for Black people. But I knew that was delusional, because he was working for a system that continued to suppress Black thought. Okay? So don't think, and let me tell you something. When Obama won the presidency, I was actually teaching at Howard University. And when the students came to class, if I were this wicked people that you're telling me that I am, the wicked person, I actually suspended the class that day, and we sat and we talked. We talked about what we had just seen, because I realized that they were so happy. They had never seen in their lives, Black people in America had never in their lives, at least in that generation, my generation and before, never witnessed a Black person as the most powerful man or person in the world. So I knew that they're coming to class, I'm not going to engage them in any classwork and teaching and whatever. We sat and we discussed, right? And I gave them my impression too. I said, we have to be very careful, while I also said it was a great honor to see a Black person, which I couldn't understand like they, because in the Caribbean, people understand that they've seen Black people in all capacities. So to us, it was just another day, right? But to them, it was special. It was special, and they cried. I had guys in my class who cried, because they never expected that the United States would have given that privilege, that opportunity to a Black person. Okay? But did that change, that very short, when you have dopamine in your mind, did that short little change, or his presidency, change America? It didn't. It didn't. Right? So we have to be careful. As I'm saying, I wasn't anti-Obama. I was just anti the whole charade and this whole sort of illusion presenting to us that this one man was going to come and change America and give Black people justice. I knew it was not going to happen. Right? And by the way, back then we had more information on Barack Obama than we have now on Ibrahim Traoré. At least back in those days, America would publish books and allowed to publish lots of articles online, right? I read everything from the conservative to the liberal media about him, right? But we're living in a world now, once you take a stand aside, people just read whatever is on that side, and they don't read other things that might be opposite to that side and try to stay in the middle and say this might be where the truth is. The truth is somewhere in the middle. The truth is not either on the left or on the right. Okay, and that's what you have to understand. We don't want to hear facts. We want to hear what is truth. You compile the facts and look at both what they're saying, because facts are really narratives in our time. They're not facts. They're just narratives, right? And then you compare all the narratives and you say, wow. And you begin to say, interesting. And then you look at what they're doing. And, oh, that person is contradictory. He said he's climate change and then he's, supporting XY policy. And that is critical analysis, right? Critical analysis is not just feeding yourself on black stuff or white stuff or Asian stuff, which many of us are doing in the context. I can't just feed my man on Michael Manley being a great man, because Michael Manley was also contradictory in some cases. Okay? And that is what I'm saying to you. And even his own wife, the former wife, that is Beverly Anderson Manley, who is still alive. By the way, I probably should carry on this program if I can get in touch with her. But Michael Manley had weaknesses too, and contradictions. All right? But we don't want to accept that. Those who love Michael Manley, it's the US who came and actually destroyed Jamaica. That's why whatever. And that is true too. But Michael Manley did some terrible things too. Justice is saying, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Rubio's brother-in-law, sentenced to 35 years for cocaine trafficking. Yeah, the whole system is contradictory and is not fair. But we're not here to pit one system against each other. As you're doing Justice and Land Champion, you are behind him. And I love Land Champions, because Land Champion is trying to understand the world. And like all of us in this chat, we're trying to understand the world. But and I know it's a very, very difficult sojourn. It's a very rocky road because we just don't understand. It's not paved because we don't have access to a lot of the information that we would like to have access to in the first place. So we just have to make decisions on what we're seeing, the few things we can get to read, and come up with what is the truth behind all of this. But yet still, we're still short-sighted, and that is why we need a supernatural power to help us to understand and to free us of what is happening in the world. Power or absolute power, right? That is what human beings like, absolute power, right? That IB is not a god. I know he's not, but we have made him into one. He's a man who stands for the justice and dignity of his people. You continue waiting for the super being in the sky and suffer. I'm not suffering because the supreme being in the sky that you're talking about has his time when just like he's done to other empires, and he did it right on the time that he said he was going to do it. The fall of Babylon, the fall of the Medes and the Persians, the fall of Roman Empire, all of these empires fell right at the time that the Bible said they were going to fall. They fell. So I'm not waiting on him. Well, yeah, I'm waiting, but I know he's going to do it when he wants to do it and when he sees the best time to do it. Now, Cuba leads the world in Alzheimer's research. Love that. I'm happy that they're doing it. Hopefully that they will lead the world in poverty reduction. I love I'm laughing. I'm not being evil. I'm not laughing. I do hope that they will lead the world in poverty reduction because the people there are suffering. Right? And I've had people who have gone there, who wanted to go there, and they're coming back to me and say, Andrew, it really was bad. It's really bad. And, and yes, we can blame America for the sanctions. We have to blame her. But at the same time, who benefits? We have to ask that question. Mia Mottley is a part of the system. Yes, IB is not. How do you know that, Land Champion? Please send me. All right, I'll send you my email, and please send me all of what the evidence that you have compiled. Right, Land Champion? Let me challenge you now. Send to my email address all the evidence that you have compiled, in which you can say definitively that Traore, Ibrahim Traoré, is not a part of the system. I, as an honest person, an honest speaker, will say I don't know. And because I don't know, I will not say that he is or is not, but I will question things that he has said and things that he is doing. So if you can send to my email address, Lion Champion, I'd really be appreciative of you telling me that he is not that sort of person. He's a man who stands up. I hope he's a man who's standing up for justice, and he's courageous. I'd be more power to Ibrahim Traoré. My son lives in China. You should go there instead of pushing the Western. Yeah, lots of black people. I've seen lots of black people. I've seen lots of people in Africa. They do have their pros and cons, including racism. All right, so I've seen things. However, what I'm suggesting is wonderful, Lion Champion. Then why not have black people go to China? Move from America and go to China. Why don't they go to China? Why don't you live in China? Right? So telling me that your son lives in China means nothing. China has no homeless population. Well, is China telling us everything though? How do you know that? You've lived there, and if they're not on the streets, where are they? Maybe in prison. But remember that China is not a transparent state. Right? So more than likely, if they don't have homeless people, they're going to put them somewhere. But the other day, I did see a news item where they do have homeless people, but they behave differently from what you'd see like in the States. Not to the extent like we have in the States. U.S. has the world's largest homeless population. That is true. That is true. That is true. And that is a big shame on the United States of America. Right? Because of the wars again that they're having, and they're channeling all of the money that they should be putting into the social, net zone and areas like housing and education, healthcare. That is what's happening, and that's not new too, right? When you have empires, that's what they do eventually when they are almost ready to die, right? That they are more interested in wars than in people. Go compare a Chinese city to America. There aren't working people living in cars or on the street like America. But what is the trick here? What is the deception here? Is it because we want to say that this is where America needs to head in terms of what you call it now, an authoritarian society? Is that what they're telling us? That China is now the blueprint of what progress is all about. But and at the same time, China is also technocratic, and China is also a country that surveils you and watches everything you do. When it comes to Mia, remember, is an ill wind that blows no good. Mia can do some good even though she talks. I think all of them, they do have sometimes when they might do a good or so. I'm not saying Miss Mia Mottley is 100% bad too. I'm sure she has done some good deeds for Barbados, But I'm saying that, we have to look at the entirety of their personalities and their political policies. We can't just look at some good things that they have done and say, oh, that's what makes them great, right? And admirable, okay? Because that is not analysis. Evangelical Christians are Zionists, and we have here, have you even traveled the globe? Traveling the globe, and which the politicians have done, and lots of our elites have done, does not necessarily mean that you understand the globe. That's what I'm saying. Many of us go to China for 2 weeks, month, and say we know China, but we have not lived there for 2 years, 3 years, and lived the everyday life of the country. But I've been to 150 countries, or I've been to 100 countries. And you don't know what the country really entails. You've just been there as a tourist, right? And you take some pictures and you feel like you've traveled and you're, So this is how the new way of travel is about, and knowledge, superficial knowledge. You go to Santo Domingo, you go to Bridgetown, and Barbados, right? And you just don't know Barbados until you've lived there. China is indeed futuristic in so many ways. I recall China flexing on America, telling them, look, you spent your money on weaponry, etc., and we spent ours on our people and infrastructure. Yes, and they do. And they do spend their money on infrastructure and the thing. The thing about it, though, what I am asking, Trevor, is when they do that, because we know that they're working towards, and China is on the climate change and all of the things that are against us, they're all on the same thing. Are they using China as the new blueprint for where we're moving without the economics? Because eventually China is also going to lose the economic power that she has, and the people won't be as prosperous as they are right now. That's for sure. That's where the globe is moving. But are they, for now, using China as the blueprint for where we need to go in terms of autocratic, politics? And that, I think that's exactly what they're doing. And we have Judeo-Christian is an oxymoron. Not sure what you mean by that. Judeo-Christian is an oxymoron. I don't think there's anything oxymoron about it. Lion Champion, I think you need to come out of your delusional box, because I think that you're not thinking. I'm sorry to say that, but you have to think. And that's what I'm here trying to. You're using the word delusional, and everything I'm telling you, I'm trying to unpack the way how you're delusional, thinking that Africa is going to eventually rise and free the world, and it's not going to happen. Right? It's not going to happen. It didn't happen in Marcus Garvey's day too, did it? But it is the mod, and he was, if you wanted to say a real man, right, who was actually working for that to happen, and it did not happen, and was the greatest mobilizer of Black people around the world, like none has ever been before or after, and he wasn't able to accomplish that. But we are going to accomplish it. Africa is going to accomplish it now with all of the leaders in the pockets of these Westerners. They're going to accomplish it. Good luck to you. Now, Trevor is saying, better it is a model for the future world after all. Right, but it's and the model for the future world is not good, right? Because what they want us to do is to live as slaves. But yeah, for now, China is doing well, but afterwards they're going to just take out that from their thing. Now, even atheists are religious. Yeah, everybody's religious. That is what people don't know. They think that is well, you think you are not, but I think your Pan-Africanism and Black ideology is a religion. Yeah, and you don't even realize that. Jews do not believe Jesus was the Messiah. Well, right, they didn't believe that the Jesus who came, because the Jews thought that the Christ who came was going to deliver them from the world and make them as the empire. The Jews wanted to be the empire. And Christ said, my kingdom is not of this world. So that's why they never accepted him, because they wanted to accept him as the empire. Americans are doing the same thing right now as the Jews did. They think that, oh, God should work with us because we want to be empire. And God is saying, I am not a part of that empire, but they think he is. Right? So all of us want God to help us to be an empire, right? And to set ourselves free, but free from what? Free from an imperial dominion? Or do you want to be free from your human nature and the human nature that is at the helm of the creation of these empires? Selfishness, right, is at the core of the greed, avariciousness. All of these things are at the core of the empires. They want to control, they want to dominate, and that is why we have them. Which doesn't want to do that? And I'm sure if Africa should rise tomorrow and become an empire, the same thing, right? Nothing new under the sun. Only fools believe in what they can't see. I live in reality. You can't tell me that you're living in reality when you're telling me about all that Ibrahim is doing when you don't know. You're just believing what you're told, because we're saying that much of what is coming about Ibrahim Traoré is AI generated. So how do you believe in what you know? You don't live in Burkina Faso. You don't live there, right? So you don't know. You can only accept what you hear, and by faith, you're saying that that's what you believe. Fine, I'm not hitting you for that, but don't tell other people not to believe in what they believe in. Harvard University is CID state recruiting center. It is, just like the media, both independent and what they call mainstream media are. Yeah, and then we have Pedro, what's the difference between the university and the asylum? Right, that's a good question. And then we have Trevor is asking, got to go now, yeah, family, but looking forward to hearing the rest of the exchange and hopefully a part 2. Yeah, we'll try to make a part 2 of Traore and Lion Champion. You want to come on the screen and educate the people? No problem, and give us your version of what you think of Mr. Traore. I would invite you on, no problem. Love that. Belief in God doesn't make someone stupid, but using faith as a substitute for thinking certainly can. But everybody uses faith. But is faith in what or in whom? And as I'm saying to you, we don't know what will happen tomorrow. You don't even know what is going to happen the next minute. So you have to have faith, but faith in what or faith in whom? Everybody has faith, because without faith, you can't live, because we just don't know what's happened the next second, what the next minute. You're here today and you're here right now, and tomorrow, or next minute, something comes and swifts your way, right? So we all live by faith, but faith in what, faith in whom, that is where you have to make the distinction. Russia and China do not have a colonial history. That can be contested, but we're not going to contest on this show. I think we have had videos where we talk about China and Russia before, but maybe we should one of these days devote it to the fact of Chinese historical imperialism, because China was an empire too, and Russia. All right, China and Russia spend 1/10 the U.S. military budget, because they are not as rich as the United States in terms of that amount of control of the world. Yeah, so they do, and the United States is spending just too much on the military, as we said, because they have more bases, they have more military bases around the world. Pedro, please give example of poverty in China. I'm sure there's poverty there. There's poverty everywhere, but as you're saying, it might not be as much as you're seeing in the United States. Gaia was the ancient name for the earth, right? So it is the worship of the earth. So that's why the worshiping of Gaia, which many people are worshiping in the whole matter of the climate change agenda. Ayatollah saved Ali Khamenei, 43 million mourners, right? And Dr. Khamenei was fluent in 4 languages: Farsi, Asari, Arabic, and English. Now, how does that help you to understand what the whole geopolitical thing is about? You're just giving me some facts about what people did. I'm sure, other people speak other multiple languages too. Ibrahim Traoré is a man, right, who cares for the people. Oh, who cares about his people? Okay. He has accepted his role and is willing to die for what he believes in, unlike the other coward black leaders. But how can you prove that he's actually willing to die? How can you prove that? I don't think you can prove that, Lion. I would like that to be proved, but how do you prove it? I read many sources. Do you read French, Chinese, and Russian literature and media? But they are also very what do you call it now? French, it would be subjective, because were the former colonial power and all these powers. So you can't just read those, you have to read everybody. Inflammation means there is some sickness present. Don't understand what's the point. Burkina Faso has already achieved food sovereignty. I'm happy for them, and I hope that it will remain so. Ordinary people's incomes have improved in Burkina Faso. This is at the same time they are fighting a war with Western proxy terrorists. And I'm happy for that. Hopefully, and I'm hoping that is so. Western media practice corporate prostitution. That is true, 100%. And then we have, this is why I now know you have done no research and all you do is talk. You would be perfect for Western intelligence. All you do is sprout whatever narrative they have fed to you over your life. But you are spreading the narratives from Burkina Faso. And you say from your French and your Russian and your whatever other media, right? All of them are narratives. And as I told you, Lion Champion, you have to read all of them, and then you find yourselves in the middle. You're taking one side, and that is not critical analysis. You're right. You can't analyze. That's not how people analyze. Where were you taught? Who taught you to critically assess things, right? You've got to be able to look at multiple sources. But you're looking at multiple sources from the same narrative. Weird. You can't even see this because your mind is closed. But what are you saying? See what? What are you saying? I'm not seeing anything that you're not saying that doesn't make any sense. Guyana is a captured nation. Yes, so and many of our nations are, whether it's Jamaica or it is, they're all captured. You can't compute another narrative or the real truth. What is the real truth? Tell me, you haven't told me yet. Along with Trinidad and Tobago, right, all of these countries are captured. ExxonMobil controls Guyana and so forth. Yes, we're coming down. And no, I expect everyone to critically think and use their brain. Hopefully, they will use their brain. Do you even know Macron visited the head chopper America and Israel installed in Syria? Yes, I heard about it. And then we have radical Islam originated from the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Yes, that is true. Agree with you 100%. Maduro was kidnapped. He was. I like the fact that this guy's just giving you some, facts here and there, but not making the connection. Come on, remember that Malcolm X quote about the media, your mind is caged. Yeah, but the media does not mean American media only or Western media only. It means media in general. That's what you have to understand. And even people in Russia complain about Russian media and Russian sort of narratives. Don't forget what the former FBI director said, we will give you your Messiah. And that is what they do. And that is what they do. That is exactly what they do. ISIS, the Al-Qaeda, Zionism are Western creation. Right. I agree 100% with you that they were Western creations. I think that you need to wake up to land champion. The moment you do, we can have a very intelligent discourse. Do your research on the recent change of hands regarding CNN. Yes. And we have CNN is long time captured. We don't even have to do any research on that. Those media houses have always been controlled. It was geopolitical why America invested in China. They wanted to keep apart Russia and China. That was the goal then. But remember now that as the years move by and the United States wants to also usher us into a one world government, including China and Russia. So that was the goal that they used for, connecting with China, for aligning with Chinese and joining hands and heart. Go look up the chessboard book. I forgot them. Yeah, but that was not the only thing it mentioned. It mentioned other things too. Your delusion about America and China working together is wrong. Tell me how it's wrong. If they were not working together, how did the pandemic come along? How did the fact that they, as we're saying, that China is able to go to America and own a lot of assets there, right? You tell me. Axios is the CIA's imperial stenographer. All of them are, not only Axios, is it Axios or Axios, all of them, the Western newspapers are all New York Times, all of them are controlled. Tell me what I don't know. Then we have China produces more renewable energy than the rest of the world combined. But what is that used for? And how are we benefiting from that? The world is deceived because the majority of us listen to mainstream media. Mainstream media is only one kind, right? Because the academia is also giving you a large chunk of misinformation. So the entire system is controlled, whether it's education, even religion, churches, and the medical system. Everything is controlled, and that is why we are in the sad state of affairs that we're in right now. You can't trust any institution, really, right? You have to read so in depth. And one of the things about it is that you have to go back to ancient books, because what we're reading now is so much distorted by what we see and people. But people back then, they were more devoted. They weren't perfect, but they were more devoted to honesty and truth than we are now in our times. All right, so wow, there's a lot of things. I won't be able to read all of these. Can I? I don't think we have to have part two. I think we have to have part two of the let me see if I can read. Because I've read a lot of Z. So let me see what Z says. I don't understand. This person is communicating in a very disrespectful way. But I must commend you, Andrew, for being so gracious. If people can't communicate respectfully, regrettably, I must leave. Yeah, we don't have to leave. I think that I understand Lion Champion, and he's been on the program, used to be a very let me read some of your supportive member of the channel, and still is. But we have our differences in ideologies, so it's okay, and that's what the whole thing about democracy, that we can also use these words. And China has an internet firewall. You need a VPN to see sites outside of China, right? So that is how great are they in terms of don't be disheartened by what he's saying, Z. We have differences of opinion, and that's okay. China was colonized by Japan at one point. Yeah, it was also an empire, right? It was also an empire. Let me read some others, Land Champion, because I haven't been able to get to other people because you've cluttered the conversation. So we want to have a second live on Traore, and I'm saying to Lion Champion, if you have other information, other narrative, which you have not shared with us this afternoon, by the way, you're just saying that that is happening without evidence, without substantive evidence, then you can actually share that with us in another chat. Okay, so until then, please share the live, like the live, and then we will see each other tomorrow or another day when we have another chat. But liberal democracy is grounded in personal. Not necessarily. There, one of the things about democracy, it can be violent. It can also be highly disrespectful. When you read even the United States and they were founding of the Constitution, they were really hot at each other. Sometimes they had to end the program for a little thing. And so we don't want to be violent here, but certainly once you're not using indecent language, if you're not using the MF words and the whatever, then I'll block you. I won't even whatever. But once you're trying to use English language and you're using words that are quite, so this is what we do, and we hope that we can be back tomorrow when we will have another live discussion. I think tomorrow we can talk about something else. Maybe not Traore, but we can talk about something that is pertinent. Maybe Chinese investment in the region, since that is something that is so, touching a lot of hot buttons. We need to look at Chinese investment in the region and to see where we're going with that. The buildings of bridges, the buildings of highways, and lots of things. And is that benefiting us, the people? I think we need to ask these very tough and important questions. See you then. Thank you so much for joining.